Okay. Good morning. Thanks for the operations meeting this morning. We'll go for health and safety for a start. Our usually exit out through the back doors or the side doors in the car park. Apologies. I have an apology from Fiona. Do you have any conflicts of interests? We have apologies. Someone move that. Second. Ross. Right. All in favour say aye. Aye. Against. No conflicts of interests. Recording device, we are being recorded in live stream. Any announced urgent business? We have a couple of items that not necessarily urgent business, but they definitely deserve recognition and recording. I'll ask Dan to talk about the first one, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think we're becoming accustomed now to winning an award. So here's our latest one that Hamish and I picked up on Thursday night. This award is tied to ARA, or I guess the officers' version of LGNZ. And this award is for the award for excellence in cost-efficient impact. Now, this is the second year on the trot that we've won these sorts of awards. And this one was primarily for the work that we've been doing over the last 10 years for getting our water schemes up to scratch. So I think you're all quite familiar with the last one we won a month or so ago. And this follows a very similar theme, but this one is specifically around the cost-efficient nature in which we went about it. So you'll know that a number of years ago, we started on the journey of we couldn't just keep the schemes running as they were, and we started looking at E. coli transgressions and getting the water as safe as we possibly could. Started bringing on board a raft of different skill sets to help us get over these regulatory hurdles, which we knew were coming over the 10-year period. And whilst many of our neighbours were still employing consultants and using external expertise to do all of this, we realised that was just going to become wholly unaffordable. So backed by the then council and the ensuing councils ever since, the infrastructure committee, now the operations committee, wood liaison committee, all these different agencies, I suppose, all totally invested in getting us to this point where we are today. So yeah, well, I mean, we probably would have been in the hole probably another 50% more if we'd have taken the traditional approach that other councils do. And I note that the judges at the awards, they recognise the project as a prime example of how rigorous project management and quality engagement can enable the council to meet both the critical regulatory requirement and the significant community expectation, which I think is a really good summary of our probably a 4 or 5 page submission on what we've done, how we've gone about it. So yeah, really pleased to have received the award, and I think it's a great testament to us all right across the piece. So.
Oh, absolutely. And I think at a time when the country's doing a lot of things around water and some parts doing better than others, for Hurunui to win not just once but twice a national award, I think we can very definitely have confidence that we're as good a place as anywhere in the country for knowing how to look after our water. So I think that's outstanding. Another very, not as grand as this one, but another thing I'd briefly like to mention, you may have seen on the TV the other night an item around Amberley Fire Brigade that was competitions with car accidents and MBOs. Well, I got the results back from that. They won 6 out of the 6 categories, and this was the South Island one this year. So you can rest assured if you have a car crash out there after you've had your good drink of water, that you'll be well looked after as well. So two good results from Hurunui, I think. If we could now go to our minutes and confirm corrections, starting on page 5. 6, 7, 8. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We'll go back through those for, sorry,
Sorry, I'll just on top page 11, Kaiwara Road.
behind you there.
Yeah, you got that one, just looked at earlier, yeah.
Sorry.
That was in the pre-meeting briefing, we caught that. So if we go back through for any matters arising, page 5, 6.
Page 6 on that, matters arising on page, it's got matters arising property, page 13. That Jed River Reserve, I think we've come to a sort of middle ground, and I think the committee's quite keen to let them graze it. It's long term. It's the most sustainable way is to do it the natural way and try and go and spray and mow and yeah. So that's where they've come to that conclusion.
Yes, and that was a good compromise outcome. Thanks, Vince. Page 7.
Just go back to page 6. Dan, did Catherine Maxwell get the mowing contract in Cheviot? That was a couple of Cheviot Community Committee meetings ago. No, a big part of it wasn't. It was the Gould Bay Residents Association annual general meeting. That Catherine was looking for the mowing contract because the specifications and the areas to be mowed, because there was areas in Gould Bay that I think the community expected them to be in the contract but didn't appear to be being mowed. So she was looking for those specifications. So I'm just not sure whether they've been sent or not.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I'm just looking at my email because I certainly asked for it to be done, to be forwarded to Catherine.
Okay.
But I seem to remember seeing an email to say, hello, Catherine, here they are. But I just need to.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure
2 or
that's.
3 people have asked for the
Yeah.
specs. I just want to make sure I got the right one.
Yeah, that was it. Thank you.
Page 7. 8. 9. 10. 11. 12. 13. 14. 15. And that's in the bus. So we're all happy with that. We can have a move on second of Dave. Oh. That's all right. Right. That's
Okay, do you mind if I? Oh, yes, thank you. So it was sent to Catherine.
Awesome. That's all I need to know. Thank you very much.
so now we've got a decision item. Turn page 16 and ask Alex to
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I've got a read decision item for you this morning, and this one relates to the Colburn Township pumping capacity and primarily around the firefighting side of things. So as part of the prioritised compliance work, the township water supply in Colburn was reconfigured, and it is now supplied from a brand new water treatment plant. The Colburn reticulation system is fairly challenging in a way that it contains quite a range of pipes, and I guess the more challenging part of the design was the LDPE pipes, so that's the low density PE pipes, and particularly the road crossings in Colburn, so that they're quite sensitive to pressure. So when the new plant was constructed, the township was prone to quite a variability in flows, so the pumping design was, I guess, quite challenging. And as part of that work, the pumps were installed and the protection systems for the townships were configured to quite a low pressure setting. So that means if we have any sort of pressure spikes within the townships, the pumps were initially configured to shut down, and this was primarily around the commissioning side of the plant. On the 2nd of April 2024, FENS carried out flow testing within the Colvin Township. Unfortunately, FENS didn't let us know that this flow testing was being carried out. And as part of that flow testing, a pressure spike was experienced in the township. And that pressure spike caused our protection systems to shut the plant down and stop providing water into the township. There's a technical reason for why that happened, and primarily that was because it wasn't a fire hydrant solely that was used to control the flows for their testing. They installed a Y junctions, which means that they could shut the water supply a lot quicker than you can with the fire hydrant, and that of course caused the pressure spike. But also as part of that flow testing, FENS have notified us that the installed pumping capacity at the Colvin Township did not meet the FENS code of practice, which means that our pumps were simply not able to pump enough water into the township to meet that code of practice. The code of practice itself, there is no legal requirement to meet the code of practice, but council does have a policy to design our water networks to ensure that they meet those codes of practice. So as part of that deficiency in our pumping capacity, a district-wide survey was conducted. So we looked at flow modelling of all the water supplies across the Huranui, and we identified that by and large they were all compliant, with the exception of a couple of small areas here and there. But Colvin certainly was a standout where the flow capacity was not sufficient to meet their code practice. So as part of the proposal, the officer's recommendation is to for the operations committee to approve repurposing a portion of the pump and VSD renewals budget for 24-25, as well as some of that budget for year 25-26 to procure the pumps, upgrade the generator on site. So unfortunately, as part of the pump upgrade, we need to upgrade all the ancillary equipment that sits beside that, and not to utilise any extra funding available. Luckily, within the current financial year, we are slightly ahead on the pump replacement program. So that means that through some of the cost efficiencies in the previous year's programs, we were able to purchase some of the pumps earlier. We had them in stock, so we could utilise the planned replacements. This year was only primarily the labour costs rather than purchasing the pump, hence why we've got a bit of extra budget left over, and we're proposing to utilise part of that budget to do the replacements. There is a little bit of a risk, particularly with utilising their budget for the next year. It means that if we have any premature failures, so unplanned pump replacements, then potentially I may need to come back to the operations committee and potentially the council to seek for extra funding should that arise. There are a couple of other options. One of those is always to continue with the status quo, and we don't recommend that option because it limits the firefighting capacity within the township. And the third option is to recommend to council that unbudgeted expenditure is used, which will be mainly procured from extra debt on the Three Waters assets to fund the pump replacement installation of the generator and the VSD. And the last mention, of course, all the equipment that we currently have on site is not going to go to waste. It's all going to be repurposed elsewhere in the network.
Through the chair, Alex, will this work be done by coming summer?
Through Mr. Chair, we're essentially pretty much ready to go. So we'll, depending on the committee's decision here, we can get contractors onto it fairly shortly.
Okay.
Alex, you talked in your report about using some of the 24-25 budget and along with some of the 25-26 budget, but the total cost is estimated about 78 grand. Can you just tell me the ratio between what will be used in the 24-25 and what will be expected out of the 25-26 budget? Is that?
Mr. Chair, I anticipated this question. I can't give you exact figures. We're sort of part way through the month, so we haven't got quite all the figures, but roughly about 2/3 of the money will be utilised from this year and about 1/3 from the following year.
Okay, so I guess I was just trying to work out in my own mind the probable risk maybe
Yes.
for the next year's budget and the likelihood of you coming back and saying we've had a blowout and a pump in X environment and now we need this much money unbudgeted. So I was just trying to work out in my mind what that risk might be. So it's medium to low. With their fingers crossed.
Yeah, through Mr. Chair, I can't forecast of, in terms of what pump failures we're likely to experience. In my view, that the reason why we've proposed this option is because we think the risk is relatively low in terms of needing to come back to the committee and ask for extra funds. But I have to say that it can happen.
Yeah, okay, I understand that, thank you. And what is likely to be not done out of next year's budget because of the reduced capital if we pull that into this expenditure?
Sure, Mr. Chair. So we plan, most of our pump stations across the district now have the duty and standby pumps. So what we typically plan to do is we do the duty pump 1 year, and the following year we do the standby pumps. And by and large, that's what we've been doing for the past 4 or 5 years. So again, what we're doing is deferring the replacement of a standby pump here and there,
Right.
Yeah, so the risk profile is typically quite low.
Thank you.
Through the chair. So you've talked 75,000, the pumps that are in there now are obviously relatively new, the ones you're replacing. So, and you talk about repurposing them. So is that 75,000 net of charging that, putting that pump into a new pump shed that you would have paid X amount of dollars? So are you taking that? And I'm thinking in my mind that 75,000 is probably half hardware, half labour. So you really could say you would put these pumps on marketplace and get rid of them, and take the money back or sell them to another council, rather than selling them in a shed. Because I know Brown Brothers they always want to sell you a new pump versus a second-hand pump. But I'm sure Waimak, if you've got some good pumps specs, you might be able to sell them. So I'm trying to work out how much of my 75,000 am I going to get back from these pumps while selling. I don't want them sitting in the shed there, because sitting in the shed, they've got to be used, and they sometimes have to sell it.
So I guess you're asking, is that the changeover cost, or is the
You've already seen that.
Could come off that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so the cost does not include the repurposing of the pumps or the generator elsewhere in the network. In this particular case, I guess the bulk of the cost is actually the generator. So the generator for that particular plant is about 38,000 of that total cost. But the generator that's on site existing will be essentially removed from that site and put to use in another pump station to make sure that we've got redundant power, to ensure that we can supply water during the power cuts. And the pumps themselves are actually, because they're very small pumps, they don't have a significant capital cost, and we can utilise them at other parts of the network.
Okay, so same question to the generator then. I said, you didn't need it in another shed at the moment. You know, put the generator on marketplace, because again, that must be a relatively new generator. It's a good demand for generators, depends on how many kilowatts. You know? But again, if you put it in another shed, you want it, charge it to that and take it off this here. It's not, you know, a generator's probably 30 grand if you, I don't know how many kilowatts it is. Or
Yeah,
100 kilowatts, 40 grand. Second hand, 30.
Mr. Chair, I think it feels like there's a little bit of a drift of direction here. If you want us to sell it to recover some funds, it's absolutely a viable option for us. Or we can repurpose it, and I think Alex and the team's intention was to repurpose it, because we can always do with more backup power throughout the network. But if you want to recover so that we don't draw money forward, we certainly can do that. That's no problem at all.
I would imagine that if the team's working, trying to standardise across the district for parts and components and all the rest of it, it's probably something that's quite, it'll fit in with our existing systems. Would that be right?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the generator will actually fit within you know, a variety of pump sheds, and as we try to build resilience into our water networks, you know, we've always would welcome any sort of standby power equipment.
I guess for me, when I read through this, it's primarily around the township I'm taking it, that's this system. And in the township, there's a lot of important agricultural supplies, petrol stations, vets, all the rest. But to me, most importantly, there's a high school there. So to me, I think it's very important that the fire system is up to spec. So I'd take a lead from anyone else around the table about thoughts around the motion. Thanks.
We're still going to have a good pressure relief system, so we don't damage pipe work. Is it? Because, you know, it's we don't want to have a blow the pipe, because it's the same effect as shutting this plant down. So I hope there's still plenty of protection for that.
Yeah, sure, Mr. Chair. I guess the smaller the pump, the quicker and easier we can control the pressure spikes. The larger the pumps, the more difficult it is to do that. So yes, the protection system will still remain in place. Since the incident, the first incident back in 2024, we have, I guess, relaxed the protection system for one, to shut down at a slightly higher pressure, and two, to auto restart if there's a pressure spike. The system shuts down, protects the township as much as possible. It gives it a period of time and then restarts back up to make sure that we've got the supply. It will just be less sensitive.
It's just going to have protection from that hammer.
Thanks, Rich. Murray?
Yeah, look, I think this has been a conversation around the Amiri Community Committee for a long time, where they have sought comfort, I suppose, in knowing that they had reliable water in the defence of fire within their communities. So I think there's been some good discussion here in regard to this paper, and I feel confident that the risk to next year's budget is minimal, and that the staff will do, you know, use their wisdom and get judgment around Dave's suggestion about repurposing or whatever that is. I completely hope that the right thing will be done there. So with that in mind, and with the knowledge of the Amiri Community Committee having sought this support from us to improve their protection for their community, I'm happy with the officer recommendation as written on page 14, so 16 in their agenda.
Do we have a mover, do we have a seconder?
Happy to move it.
Mr. Chair, before you make the motion, could I please have some direction whether you would like officers to repurpose the equipment or?
I was just thinking about that, Mr. Chair, what I probably think is the best thing to do is if you make the resolution as is today, we will look at it, and if we can recover some decent money for it, that we think's the right value for that asset, then we'll sell it and we won't pull the money forward. But if we don't think, if we think we're going to lose out on it, then we'll keep it.
Yeah, and especially if you're going to buy another generator for, the point I was trying to make, if you're going to buy another generator for another shed to make it resilient, it's actually not costing 75,000. And that's the learning from it. And two is, if we do another pump shed in a future new town, you've said they're all good, but we need to make sure it's right on day one and talk to friends and that. That's the learning from it to me is, we've just done it. We should have had that sorted at day one, but we're not looking to go back, we're looking to go forward. So that was the point I was just making, is it's not necessarily a $75,000 cost to Culverden. It's 75,000 minus the cost of a generator that you're going to put somewhere else, isn't it?
Yep.
That's the point I was making.
Okay, we're all happy with that, there's a motion on the table.
Just one wee question, Alec, you said there were some areas of the district that had problems with. I'm interested to know where they are.
Yeah, through Mr. Chair, so there's a report that's available that we can forward on.
Yeah, or we can just send out an email explaining where those highlighted areas are and what we might do about them. And if-
I just think he mentioned there was some areas where it wasn't up to the standard, so we have a heads up where they are.
we can maybe bring a report back to let you know what that is.
Yeah, sorry, it's just triggered another question. Is there a report about our requirement or a FENS requirement?
Well, our requirement says that we'll do what's reasonably practicable to meet the code of practice. But this is, the report was done on the code of practice. FENS, yes. FENS.
And I guess the other thing is, how can we make sure that FENS came in this time and did their report without letting us know? Have we tightened that gap as well? Yeah, because that's kind of the next steps as well, isn't it, really? So that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, Alex has talked to it, but he's done extensive engagement with even the FENS, I guess the ivory tower of FENS as well. So he's been talking to people in Wellington and
Yep.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, there's a motion on the table. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Yes. Yeah, while if we go on our discussion, I would keep our chair if he doesn't mind. If we could go to page 29, and if Alex can cover his three waters report.
Yeah, sure. Mr. Chair, I'll move on to page 29. By and large, our routine maintenance program is done. You might notice that in some places we've done more things that we've planned, particularly around the staff safety training. So we have planned to train so many people, but in fact we've trained slightly more. And in a couple of places we've had some planned pump station inspections that we were not able to meet. That's particularly during our summer season times, and there is no point essentially of playing catch up. So there's no point of doing two pump station inspections in 1 month when we think that one's enough. So that's the reason why some of these are behind. And work is continuing. I guess some of the key points on our water safety plans, and we plan to have that work completed by the end of this calendar year. There's nothing unusual to discuss about the graphs on the following pages. I'm happy to take any questions around those. Just wanted to touch briefly, we carried out earlier in the year, we carried out some in-house raw water tank cleaning down at Kauai as a cost-saving measure. We've had to do that again, but in this particular case, we've had to utilise a contractor to help us because I guess the heavy sediment that we're seeing build up inside those raw water tanks.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair, Alex, just, that's what I picked that up there, $20,000 to clean the tank. I'm assuming that's not a 30,000 litre tank, it's one of your big ones.
Yeah, through Mr. Chair, it's a bank of 30,000 litre tanks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we do that in our own water supply up in the village, and I appreciate with health and safety what it is, that's the issue of getting inside a tank now, but with a plastic tank, how we did it was we had a skill saw, a battery pad skill saw that you can cut a hole in if someone, the worst case scenario, if you have a medical event in there, that so that was our backup to get people out. So presumably common sense does play a role in cleaning out tanks, that you can do it sensibly and cost effectively.
Moving on down to the report. So the upcoming legislation and regulation changes. Office has prepared a submission for the proposed drinking water acceptable solutions, and that has been endorsed by council, and that submission will be made before the due date. We are still out and almost completed our recruitment for the utilities officer waste and stormwater role, and that's replacing an existing internal move. Throughout the months, there was 4 customers who experienced complete loss of water supply. One of those was an on-demand scheme, and that was as part of a planned shutdown, and 3 in restricted schemes. So it's actually quite a low number for the month. In total, there were 7 water outages, all in on-demand schemes, affecting 257 connections, and mainly these were around routine and reactive repairs as well as new connections. 156 connections were inspected and tuned as part of our routine maintenance program in the water supply servicing. We're continuing in developing our data and view software. This is the piece of software that will allow our field staff to have greater control of the network using remote control. So that's starting, stopping pump stations and being able to see the network in a more real-time manner. Quite a lot of progress being made this month within our electrical maintenance program. So there were 51 site inspections and maintenance tasks completed. 24 of these were routine maintenance tasks, and this has been a long time coming for us. I guess it's taken us quite a while to get through all the reactive work to get onto the routine maintenance side of things. So, and on top of that, there were 27 reactive jobs completed, and these consisted of replacement of solar panels, batteries, disconnection of pumps, relays, and those sort of things. Around the treatment plant performance, as discussed last month, we experienced quite a rain event here towards the end of April and start of May that caused some issues for us, particularly around the Huranui No. 1 water treatment plant, where our ultrafiltration and ceramic membrane equipment was actually run as designed. And it was really difficult for us to be able to tune that equipment without having real turbidity or real turbid water in the system. So the plant had gone through its first cycle of essentially trying to clean the water. So the treated water portion of the plant worked really, really well. We struggled a wee bit on the river return side of things. So just to explain that, we've got a membrane that cleans the water and then supplies treated water for our network. And then the discarded dirty water goes back through another cleaning step before it's returned back to the river. And it's that portion of the plant that needed some tuning. So after we've gone through that, we've had our contractors back out to inspect the system, and we found some cracked ceramic membranes within the plant, which were replaced yesterday. And the contractors are just investigating as to what caused the cracking, and we suspect that it's potentially during commissioning the system was overpressurized.
Just ask around the live one, because it's pictures over page 2. Is that around water inundation from paddock, or is that coming from the river, from the bore, or where's this problem?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. So the issues that we experience at Blythe are relatively unique. So the bore location for that particular plant is not in an ideal spot. And mainly we experience issues with discoloration of the water. So it's not actually suspended particles, it's dissolved particles, which make the water unsuitable for the UV system to treat. And the filtration of that water is, you essentially can't filter that stuff out because it's dissolved in the water supply. So yeah, with that poor water quality, we've had to implement, unfortunately, a water notice for the Blythe water scheme, which has now been lifted. But it certainly is an ongoing risk and will need to be addressed through future planning.
Just with the Blythe, it'd be quite difficult to shift the bore there. And have you looked at, we've spent all this money on Haranui number 1, which is up the river a bit. Have you looked at mining them? Because if you're going to have to shift, it's going to cost you big bucks to, it's not a very big scheme, and amalgamate it, because you know, we've spent a lot of money on the Haranui number 1, and it concerns me a bit when we start to have problems with it, and it hadn't been going long at all. It's cost one of the most expensive treatment plants in our schemes, and I hope it's just a hiccup.
I was going to come back to the Haranui number 1 also. Does the pipe replacement, the crack in the pipe replacement, does that come under like a warranty period, or is that a cost that we will bear?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, it will be a warranty issue, because we think that the fault was caused. So we're really good at recording the data to support, I guess, our theory. And in this particular case, there's a specific threshold for how much pressure those membranes can sustain, and the only overpressure event that we've seen was during commissioning. So that part will be covered under that. Now, to add on to that, we also had a critical PLC failure on that particular site during this period. So essentially, the plant is, I guess it's one of the most heavily automated plants in our network, and being also so complex, it requires quite a lot of controls. So the main brain for that particular plant failed last month, and after subsequent investigation, we found that there was a duct that was not sealed during installation. And rodents got inside the control panel and unfortunately defecated over the main brain, which caused damage to the PLC. So during that period, the plant had to be run manually in order to supply the reticulation, so it had to be manned for 24 hours. And we kept on top of our regulatory compliance by essentially having a person on site and recording data about the plant's operation every 10 minutes in order to keep our compliance. And the PLC has subsequently been replaced, and that again has been done under warranty, and the ducts have been sealed up.
Alex, could you just, I'll get you in my head. The Hurunui unit number one, the problem was stability of the water discharging to the river, not going into out to the drinking water system.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So there were no issues at all
In the
with the
drinking water
treatment
system, no,
process
no.
for drinking water. The issues were more around the river return side. And again, the issues weren't about us discharging poor water quality. It was about the process itself and the membranes not functioning as we expected. So it was backing all of our sumps and river return tank up and not letting the process sort of flow smoothly.
Yeah, just to address the point that Vince raised a moment ago. So it is something that we are looking hard at, is how do we, I mean, I have an innate desire to maximise the usage of that Hurunui number one scheme as much as possible. And certainly one of the things that is on the table is in later years looking at extending that scheme into the Blythe, maybe even into the Coonawarra. But equally, both of those schemes lend themselves reasonably well to the acceptable solutions that we've just submitted on. So if we get that one over the line and we get the acceptable solutions that we want, then we may see the using that protocol into those schemes rather than using Hurunui number one. But I still have this, you know, like I say, this desire to maximise the Hurunui number one's usage and try and stretch that money as far as we possibly can. So those conversations are being had right now. And interestingly, we met with the CEO from Te Mata Arawai on Thursday and just reiterated our point of view about the acceptable solutions, and that, if you remember, the sticking point that Kirsty talked about was that EG1 NTU, and that was the point that we really drove home about. The rest of the intent of the acceptable solutions is great, but that one specific clause, if you like, just doesn't work for us. And he seemed to be amenable to that. Who knows what's going to come out, but he seemed to be on board.
I think I can reiterate that Dan made the point pretty strongly to him, so.
Just moving on, the Amberley Kowai treatment plant remains after routine maintenance work with source water tanks remains essentially in wet standby, so the plant's ready to go, but it's currently not being used to supply water into the reticulation. As mentioned before, work continues on our water safety plans and source water risk management plans, and good progress made last month on the Blythe and the Wairua water safety plans. By and large, all the plants were compliant across the network, and there were no transgressions. And if everyone's happy with that, I'll move on to wastewater and stormwater. We've done quite a lot of maintenance on our wastewater network last month, mainly a lot of routine flushing right across the network, clearing manholes. So we've had essentially a sucker truck working alongside of our staff, making sure that all the manholes and the pipes are ready for winter. Within Amberley, the new screen was commissioned down at the Amberley wastewater treatment plant, and that screen greatly reduces the amount of, wet solids that are taken out. Those are returned back into the pond, and it's only the inorganics that are compacted and centrifuged out to make sure that the amount we dispose of to Cape Valley is reduced. And actually, I guess one notable point is the amount of water used by these newer screens that were installed throughout the network is quite significant. So we use a lot less water than what we would have done with the older type screens.
Alex, it might just be the season, but I've noticed down Newcombs Road that the last least a year or two, there hasn't been the stormwater, wastewater, stormwater really, issue so much. Is that just the general area, or have we done something different there, or?
Mr. Chair, so the Newcombe drain system has had a complete, I wouldn't say overhaul, so complete capacity restoration work. So we've worked all the way from the non-return valve at the exit out to the Kowai Lagoon, all the way out to Newcomb's Road. So the entire drain system has been fully cleaned. We've had a range of staff, as well as a couple of contractors helping out during the heavy rain weather events last month, and there were no serious issues reported anywhere within the wastewater network. Yeah, we've got the Shediac ponds are ready for 2 new aerators to be installed. You may remember last month I reported that the old paddle type aerators at that plant were coming to the end of their useful life, and actually both failed. And given their heavy maintenance requirements, we've decided to retire those and put 2 new Vortex type aerators, which are on their way over from the United States. We started also the DO installation project, and at Harden being the first one. Moving on to stormwater. Dissolved oxygen, sorry. So it's a measure which essentially tells you the health of your bacteria and algae within the ponds. Stormwater wise, again during the heavy rain event, we had our staff out in force right across the network, making sure that stormwater network was performing as good as it can be. They were out around the townships and clearing sumps, grates. We had installed pumps where they needed to be installed in anticipation of heavy flows, and with having everything, I guess, done before the rain event actually arrived, we suffered no issues throughout the reticulation. And we continue our heavy stormwater maintenance program last month, which it was focused on portions of Leafield Beach, Leafield, and Shediac Township. Yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. And there's a couple of photos on the following pages that show some of the work we've done. And just one note, actually on those photos, you might see the pump station at Harden there, the High Street pump station. The generator that's installed outside that shed is actually quite a similar scenario to the Culverden generator that's been repurposed from elsewhere in the network. Just an example of where we utilise existing equipment to have great redundancy for Harden in terms of wastewater pumping capacity.
Any further questions for Alex?
I have a comment, Ray, just regarding both Dan and Alex at the meeting we had last week down in Harry, and because I take people to that meeting and from, we have quite a chat about the meeting, and it's all positive. You know, what they hear from that meeting, from your knowledge, both of you, is just great. So, and it's a great way of disseminating that information out to the community. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And probably a wee corner of this is part of your team as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Now, if we could turn to page 24, and that's last. Where am I? Oh, Ruth. Hang on, mate. You go to page 21.
Okay, page 22, very brief summary this month. I do just want to take an opportunity to point out just the number of compliments that we have received. The highest that we've received in the last couple of years for sure. And if you have read down through them, that you'll see one of note that's specifically for the mayor and councillors, so very well done. And that contributes to those compliments. One of the things that we're very mindful of, and you will have seen the submission that got circulated about the building regulations, granny flats. We are just, whilst I think on the whole we're supportive of trying to make housing more affordable, there are some gotchas within that new legislation that does put council into it. So whilst an LBP can build it, there is some other aspects of it around compliance and enforcement that does talk back to council, and not being part of the process like we are today, we're still asking those questions around if it doesn't get built right, who reports the LBP, when it does get completed, how do we get told? Because at the moment it's on the homeowner, and if it's on the homeowner and they know that they're probably going to be in the hole for some DCs, then they might not be forthcoming in telling us about that. So if you've read that submission, I think that actually the team have done a really good job in putting that together, but nonetheless, I do think it's going to be a risk for us, certainly into the future. And the other piece of that summary is just about the wheelie diggers, and you've got a report today that's going to talk about the success of those thus far. So hopefully we'll explore that with some detail. And the only other point of the first couple of pages I've mentioned is just the cost saving initiatives. Just to remind you of that, so cost savings we're currently up at about 481,000. Now, a large portion of that is those wheelie diggers, but equally what we haven't captured in there is the savings that we talked about in the last council meeting for the waste contract. So the contract's less than what it is today, so we haven't factored those savings in there yet. But just to remind you that this isn't without any specific targeted program of cost reduction. This was just a highlight through the course of the year where teams work together, look for efficiencies continually. And it was about highlighting those because, you know, there's generally a feeling out in the wider community that sometimes council isn't particularly efficient and they don't look for those cost savings. So this was our attempt, without, like I say, without any formal program, just to signal that we are actually undertaking that sort of work. We do look for those efficiencies and we do look for bipartisan agreement across the teams. So this is just a good emphasis of that. So with that, I'll hand over to Mark.
Thank you, Dan. So I'll talk about the libraries. Beginning of the month, I attended the Public Libraries New Zealand Forum. So it's sort of an annual event where public libraries get together and a number of keynote speakers. So Brian Pitchman was talking about AI, and it's a sort of ever-moving beast. And his thing was mainly about AI being used to replicate people and the things that they do. So one of his great things was called Twin Protocol, where you can actually create a cyber version of yourself within a few minutes of recording your voice and recording a video of what you look like. And as he said, AI in itself is neutral, but it could be used for good or for bad. So, and we hear quite a bit about the bad side, which is quite real. They also released something called loveyourlibrary.org at this event. So it's sort of a portal for libraries to post their good stories, but also their statistics and things like that. So, and everybody can go in, and it's a place that libraries can also pull information out of as well to share the stories of their successes. The Library Challenges Register, which is mentioned here, was also launched. So not so much in New Zealand, but in America, there's lots of challenges to what libraries do, who can go to the library, you know, what books they have, and certainly the Tim Rue librarian, he left his job there because there was just so many challenges to the items which they held in the library, things like that. We've seen that once with again, a request to whether we had any rainbow story events in our libraries or in any public buildings. But apart from that, we haven't really had any. the idea of the register is it can sort of be used to build up, data and statistics and see if there's any trends coming and what people are inquiring about. Certainly what happens in America tends to follow here. I did have someone actually a day or two ago make a comment about a book and said that the author had this intention was to destroy the population of the world. But when I looked at it, he'd written a book about the way technology is going, that possibly exists that humans, AI could take over. But it wasn't that at all. But I did ring the woman back and said if she wanted to ring me back, I'd have a chat to her about it, but she hasn't done that. So, yeah. And also in here, National Archive and National Library and Museum have just been combined. So they've got a new National Archives building in Wellington and they've got a bridge to join them together. So it's coming under one big structure now, so that's happening. And locally, we've had our budgeting services, which have gone very well in the library. There were 5 sessions on people, trying to look after finances and offering advice on borrowing and things like that. So it's gone down very well. They had been previously budgeting services, but they didn't actually have a program, so they were just there and people pop in and it didn't really gain the momentum that this did. And they were popping in, so we had 5 sessions in a row, so that was good. And also CAB is still continuing to come fortnightly. It's not that busy, but people are coming up. And that happens before the JP clinic, which is very, very busy. That's weekly, the JP on a Friday. And I guess the other things happening, we're just sort of starting to plan for some holiday events, which is coming up very fast. So those are the main things. Did anybody have any questions?
Yeah, through the chair, Mark, just in regard to SnapSense Solve and how we've all got used to using that, and it sort of explains itself in the vertical at SnapSense Solve, and potentially with changing over to Anteno. Is there any thought about how you're going to make that catchy, or that is means the equivalent of SnapSense Solve, but it's a name that we're not familiar with.
Quite descriptive, isn't it?
Yeah. Can someone have is that the name it'll be sold as, or will it be given a new name that's more appropriate to what it's going to do? Thoughts?
Mr. Chair, I think that the name is the name, but our job is to sell it to the community as something that's a replacement for SnapSense Solve. And I know that the team are working on how that is communicated out to the wider masses. So that's something that's currently in train at the moment. But the Anteno does far more than what SnapSense Solve does as well. So it also allows us, so if we do get subscribers to it, it allows us to push information out to them much more readily. So things like we're having conversations about whether or not we can do traffic management. So we can highlight a certain area of the district and say, by the way, there's some traffic management coming into your area. Be mindful of it. There might be some delays or some water outages. So there's a whole raft of other messaging that we can. So it's a bigger tool. So hopefully people see the benefits of it and jump on board.
And my last question regarding that technology is, it will be user friendly for computer illiterate slides. I've just got the hang of SnapSense Solve quite well, so it'll be a similar system presumably that you go on to something.
Yeah, like all these systems, they're designed to be relatively simple to use. So this district has certainly jumped in and used SnapSense Solve. We've won the Solar of the Year award, a couple of times now, given the number of SnapSense Solves that we get and the number of users we have signed up for the size of our population. So this district has proven itself to be pretty technologically literate, and we don't. But by the same token, we will be out there teaching people how to use Anteno as well.
So
I'm
sorry,
sure we'll
it
find
will be
Ross's
an
as
app.
long as we've got children in the hand.
Yeah, it will be an app that you download,
Yeah.
just like. No, thank you.
Any further questions for Mark? Mark, thanks for that, and I noted the big spike in the compliments received, and that's great. I'd like to add one. On the Snaps in Soul I did a week or so ago. In the rain, 2 Cape Crusaders, the duo turned up in their high-vis capes, and in the rain they did a big gardening bit of work up in Osborne Road, and I thought that was outstanding. Thank you very much. So now, I think we're going to break for a cup of tea. Okay, welcome back. If we could now continue with the discussion items and go to page 43 and ask Andrew to go through regulatory.
Thank you, good morning. Yeah, so in the regulatory space for May, service requests calmed down a little bit compared to the previous months, so we've managed to close a few more than we received, catching up a bit there. Number of littering incidents was a bit lower as well, and so we just had our regular hotspots, White River, and also the Medbury Road Bridge, the further inland one, which we've dealt with quite a bit over the years. One rubbish dumping incident that was a wee bit different was actually at Council's clean pool site on Stanton Road there, but on one of our routine monitoring visits to that site, found the gate had been lifted from the hinges, and then within the site there was sort of 2 loads of probably small truck or trailer loads of waste dumped on the site there, which was searched and no identification found, so removed. And so done a modification to that gate hinge now, so that there's now a screw drilled through the hinge and then screwed through the hinge and into the wood. So I mean, it's not infallible, but it's a little bit harder to break off. And I also noted that compliance officers continue to attend complaints at the end of Beach Campground quite a bit. We've got one quite long-term stayer leaving today after quite a lot of complaints about their dogs, and then also their response to other campers when hit up about their dogs. We did a bit of work with that person, and we did manage to get Age Concern to come and check in and see if they could provide some help, and in the end they concluded there wasn't any further help they could provide either. So yeah, quite a few people have dealt with down there have fallen into that kind of category where they probably need some support from somewhere, but it's not available from anywhere. So we're striking, and in this case we certainly did strike where we sort of gave the person a letter to move on, and they said, well, but Okay, there we go. And that's a little bit tricky, I think, because that's not necessarily the space that council was designed to be working in there, but it's also not a space where we want to be on the wrong end. So yeah, quite a bit of time for the compliance team working with people at that campground, trying to resolve things and.
Sort of Jim's not moving on to another campground.
Well, yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, that has been the case with some of the people that have moved on, and in another case, we had behaviour that was so bad, and I think we talked about it on the previous meetings, you know, the vandalism and chopping down the trees and stuff, that person was trespassed from all Huronoi District Council campsites, but that's kind of the decision that you have to make in order to prevent them from going somewhere else.
I was just gonna say, so where is this person going to?
This person has found private, somewhere to stay on some private land in near Darfield, which sounds like it'll be more suitable. Yeah.
It's not easy.
No, I mean, it's not, and I know there's also discussions around Freedom Camping Act and homelessness in other districts, which hasn't been a big problem for our Freedom Camping area, but maybe we're seeing slightly more of these issues in the campgrounds, particularly Amberley. Yeah, I guess that's a bit of an aside because it wasn't in the report, so I better keep on track. And food, so we did 6 verification audits and all results were satisfactory there. We had 1 food safety complaint received, but found it to not be substantiated, so that one was closed off. District Licensing Committee in alcohol held 2 hearings in May, 1 for a manager's certificate, and the committee declined that certificate because of the applicant's lack of experience, and 1 for a renewal for a winery in the district where there was no opposition from the reporting agencies, but there was a public objection, and arguably one of those public objections that under the old criteria before the community participation changes were made would not have passed it must be in accordance with the criteria in the Act, but that filter no longer exists, so that resulted in it being a hearing on mostly matters that were outside of the committee's scope. So after hearing all that, the committee granted that renewal. And yeah, there was another hearing just yesterday for a manager's certificate as well. The inspectors went to 11 licensed premises, just non-compliance at one of those premises where the manager left the site while the inspector was still there, having just spoken to him, so it was a little bit of a copybook there. And as a result of that, there was a warning letter was issued to them, and there were 3 other warning letters issued for various non-compliances that were picked up over the month.
Chair, Andrew, just regarding liquor licenses, the Coldland liquor license was appealed, or that license was appealed, that's outside of our hands now, but is there a date for that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think a hearing date has been set yet.
Okay.
The inspector has been asked to file his submissions by a date that I'm not sure of, so it's moving, but I don't have the hearing date for you.
Thank you.
That's right. It's just 2 dog attacks reported in May. One was a dog was quite seriously injured, and the homeowner could see on CCTV that the two dogs that allegedly did it come and go from the property, but not the actual attack. The owner of the offending dogs wasn't aware of the attack and went to see him, because the dogs just roamed off and come back. Has since acknowledged it's agreed to pay reparations, build a proper big cage thing to keep these dogs in, so we've classified those as menacing. Injuries to the other dog meant that consideration for something a bit more serious was given, but again, available evidence, it's borderline, so leave that one there probably because of the response of the dog owner once the event had taken place. And there was another anonymously reported dog attack where a dog ran from a property in Marshlands Road area and bit a cyclist on the foot and damaged his shoe, and again, owner wasn't aware that had taken place, so that was you know, was reported anonymously with no details to go back to, and the way that it was worded sounded like it wasn't the person who was bitten that reported it either, so it was all a bit vague, so it was just a conversation in the morning with that.
Just question or comment on this one. A working dog, are we treated any differently from any dog in the district that are running a
No, I mean, it's the same,
same, yeah.
yeah. Just a quick note on Freedom Camping, you'll see the numbers of site visits has dropped off, which is A, normal for winter, and B, because we're doing Glenmark exclusively with the CCTV camera that we put in there now, so no physical visits unless something's out of order on the camera. And the Hamner River Reserve is very muddy. We've had a few, well, mainly the reports have come from our monitoring officer actually, that the, you know, potholed and muddy. But we've previously talked about that there isn't a budget to do any significant upgrade to that at the moment. So the best option that we're considering is whether we move the camping sites to a different part of the reserve to rest the part that's very muddy. But the downside to that is it will then create a second very muddy part of the reserve and no grass. So we're having decided what the best course of action is there.
Through the chair, Andrew, with a situation like that, is it possible to apply for funding from the tourism fund that they get from visitors entering the country to re-shingle or to apply shingle to an existing area like that to improve it, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the infrastructure funding around this, there hasn't been any for a while, and I think they sort of set a priority each time they do it, so it would depend. But we have priced doing that, and we've got that estimate in our back pocket of that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I just received notification the other day that there will be no more funding around the tourism infrastructure.
So through the chair, they're still collecting the money.
So they're collecting a tourism levy, is that what we're talking about? Yep, yeah, they certainly are.
But it's not coming out to provinces.
Well, it may be, but the tourism infrastructure fund, there is no intention to have further rounds of the tourism infrastructure fund.
So through the chair, might they have something but it's called a different name? Well, we don't know yet, no.
Yeah, but possibly through the chair, I mean, there seems to be I guess a direction within government where they're looking to utilise that funding partly for DOC and partly for tourism promotion, rather than supporting councils with providing tourism infrastructure.
It's through the chair, because I'm not sure whether anyone else filled in a survey. I just filled in a survey regarding that, and for me the emphasis was on that the need for that levy to be distributed for councils like us that have the cost of those tourists that travel around and want facilities for free and get them for free, but they're not for free.
We're talking about different things here, aren't we, through the chair? Hamish, I think, Ross, you're talking about the TIF fund, but actually, I think it's all, but you're also talking about the government levy for
Correct.
tourism. So I think they're slightly different in their approach. Don't you reckon?
Well, the tourism infrastructure fund was for one-off things, whereas
So
the levy.
the levy is a government levy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most of that funding, sorry, through the chair, is to be distributed through DOC, as what Hamish has just said. So the likelihood of,
Councils getting.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. I think I'm pretty sure it's sort of two different.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Is there any funding from the tourism board? You know, they publicise the district come. It's in their tourist business interest to have a bit of infrastructure. You know, they want people to visit. You know, could they come up with some money? Come with their budget?
I guess the bottom line is most of these
Yeah.
budgets are pretty thin.
Yeah,
And it's the conundrum of it, as Ross said, is just putting money into areas where people aren't, makes it a bit tougher to. But then what? Carry on here.
I suppose alongside that as well, as well as that infrastructure fund, as we used to have the operational costs where we funded monitoring and things out, and that came to an end last year or the year before as well, so there's no operational costs.
I don't want to say he's behind you, but he is.
I am supporting it. So that fund was the transition fund for local authorities.
Yeah.
And that has also been closed by the Crown. So if you go onto the MBIE website, you'll find a section called Closed Tourism Funds. And that's where the notification of these things being closed is.
Just as, I guess as a point of interest after that, after the rain event in the start of May, we got the steps and solve requests in the paper on page 45 there with all these tyres on Emberley Beach, and it assumed that the reporter had gone through and stood them all up. And when it first arrived, we thought that's a really strange way to go and dump tyres. And as it turned out, they'd actually washed out of that car park at the north end of Leftfield Beach. And it's been built with a sea facing sort of retaining wall of tyres, and since we wrote the report, there's a post on Facebook from actually Kevin Roach, who's involved a lot around that area with planting and looking after that area, and sort of explained that car park was built by members of the community a long time ago, and that's obviously how it was constructed. So it's not a car park that's maintained by council. It kind of sits on that foreshore land near the conservation strip, and it's currently looks a bit like those bottom two pictures where it's got a few road tyres sitting there. So we've collected all the loose ones off the beach between Emberley Beach and Newcombs Road, basically, and can't see any more around there. But it's possible that in another high tide that it'll spread the rest of them that are there. We're just not really sure how and who will deal with that issue yet.
That preempts my next question. I've got a meeting tonight of the Leafield Beach Residents Association. I'm pretty sure this is going to come up with reports or anything during the day. We've got a day or a plan, or what's it said, it's only a problem. I don't know if it's roading or if it's a truck, I don't know quite where this falls or not.
Well, I think we're probably of the same mind. It was built by the community probably way back when without the council's involvement, as we understand it. But as is often the case, those community members have probably moved on and it's been used forever and a day and always thought of as a council car park. So the interest goes towards, well, what's council going to do about it? So, and we're probably trying to distance ourselves because we know that ECAN are going to come along and say, well, you don't really have that there. So we're just caught between rock and hard place or in that grey area that we're trying to navigate as well. So probably we don't have a response at the moment. That'd be my Andrew, unless you've got anything
No, I
different.
don't have anything. I suppose that is their concern as well, as we don't want to end up with council on the hook for a massive, a remediation, and we also don't want to leave it like that and to see it get any worse. So
And I'm
discussions
guessing
ongoing.
that if it was built by the community, they now would have no right to go back and reinstate it, I presume, with
I think it
dog
could
or
be.
anything
I
like
think it could be possibly just reinstated for protection without going and putting any more tyres
Without
or any
tyres,
contaminated material or anything in it. I think probably a quick get rid of the loose tyres that still look like they're loose and tidy up that really eroded bit at the front. I think would be perfectly acceptable.
you don't think it's, a load of rocks could be put there or anything like that without upsetting some dog or anything or
Gotta be
someone.
quite careful in
It'd
that
be
space.
difficult for us to comment without giving it some real good thought, I think, and given that we're in probably a public meeting, probably don't want to air all those thoughts. But it's certainly top of mind for Andrew this evening about how we're going to deal with this moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I've got for regulatory, so I'll move on to my questions. Page 47, the planner there, I suppose the one I really want to highlight is the contract renewal. The contract is now signed for the waste contract for the next 3 years at least, plus one at our option. So there's some pre-commencement work underway, just to, the method is largely the same for delivering that service, but in terms of managing the contract, there's some changes around the reporting that we need for MFE and our meeting schedule. And also in the same way that we do with some of the roading requests, we're working on a mechanism so if the first any missed bags or missed litter bin type complaints go straight to the contractor and just get dealt with that way rather than work the way through the system here. And also discussing the co-branding opportunities around some of the really the prominent stuff like trucks and things, just to see if we can raise the profile a wee bit. That's quite exciting. In terms of the volumes and statistics, there's not really much that stands out to report to you this month. The volumes are all tracking pretty much as per last year, as per expectations. The recycling tonnage is slightly down, but nothing too drastic. The contamination rate's still really good.
And you could ask the egg recovery work that was started a while ago, it's a separate system. There's no sort of a overlapping or anything in the future, or working together, or is it easier just to run this through two different systems?
We'll do similar campaigns again. We're talking about the plastic wrap collection up at the end. We'll do similar campaigns again. At the moment it's done that way because that organisation receives money through its channels to do those kind of schemes. But we do have the egg recovery, the plastic collections that we host the cage thing at the transfer station. I'm not expert in it, but I understand it's people who have signed up to the scheme and bought a bag. So your bag's got a numbered tag on it of some sort, so that you can deliver that to us, and we accept on behalf of, I think, egg recovery or similar scheme.
And similar thing, the tyre recovery program.
Yeah.
Myself and a number of people have used that. That's been okay. We found ourselves inundated with too many tyres or
We've had more, but we haven't. Nothing. It hasn't been drastic. There hasn't been. We haven't been overrun with them or anything like that. I think because it's limited to 5 tyres per customer per time, and I think that actually does keep the levels quite manageable for us. That's pleasantly surprised with how that's going. Only slight difficult thing with that is the tyres have got to be clean. So if you end up with 25 tyres that you've collected off the beach, for example, full of gravel.
Sorry.
No, so volume's good. We have taken on a weighbridge operator for 2 shifts per week, but as a result of one of the existing weighbridge operators reducing their hours a wee bit, which means we now have 4 trained staff with regular weighbridge shifts. It just gives us a slightly deeper pool of people to call on to run those weighbridges. It's something I've always viewed as a bit of a risk in terms of having trained operators to keep the transfer station weighbridges running. A couple of instances of dump rubbish found on the collection grounds by the contractor that were just photographed and uplifted while they did the collection round to save someone else going special, so out specially to get it, which was good. Quite a bit of maintenance done over the last month at the transfer stations, and so both weighbridges at Hamner and Amberley calibrated and serviced at the same time, and 1 trip from the servicing people. And another successful repair cafe in that sort of community and education space. So that's partnered up with Molly's Place in Amberley, who organise a lot of the volunteers and do quite a lot of work to get those things off the ground. And that's the 3rd repair cafe that we've run jointly with them, and they're really well attended. This one, I think, particularly cool that it was 91% of the things that were bought down were able to be repaired, and the feedback was as well that there's a lot of repeat customers who've probably saved something from the thought, oh, yeah, that was good, and saved an item or something from home to come down to the next one. So there's people seem to have a fairly good idea of what items they've got that can be repaired and what can't, which I think is a bit of a it's an avenue for us to speak to with some of our comms as well. If people kind of know this is good, I could repair this. I think that's quite valuable for us to know. But around the cost savings, there's a few small things there, as Dan pointed out to me on the way in. The thing that we haven't listed down there is the new contract, which has saved us significantly over what we had budgeted for it, and even more significantly over what we feared it could have been. So we'll probably put that in next month's one, just so that we can quantify the savings, because that's a real good news story for us. That's all I had to highlight.
Now, just on the servicing of the weighbridges, have you tried working in with all the other weighbridges in those areas?
No, we haven't, as far
I
as
was just thinking Ravensdown, how many, there's a few of them around just in.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and we probably, because I know the people that come up,
Because they'll be on the same regime as you guys.
yeah, they'll be on annual waiverages and know the stuff. Part of the big cost is that the big calibrated weight has to be transported up here, and yeah, it's a good point that if it was transported up here for 4 or 5 different outfits once, then we could save some money there. So yeah, we'll ask. I don't know whether we use the same people or not, but
We were just talking to them just to say,
it's a really good point.
because you've got the same routine and
Yeah.
the whole district.
Yeah.
Most of the transport yards have got a weighbridge.
Any further questions for Andrew? Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you. It's regular and clean as usual. Okay, if we could now ask Kerry to come up and go to page 52 to 58 and have a look at.
Morning, everyone. Page 52, building report. Here on the planner there, we've still got one team member going through the cadetship, and we're progressing through our IANS preparations for October next year. We've got a long-term plan there. Over on page 53, we received 35 building applications in May, which was slightly down from the same time last year. And same with issuing, we issued 55, which was slightly down from the same time last year. We are processing them on an average of 10 working days at the moment, all building consents, which is considerably lower than last year. We have had it as low as 9 days in the past, so we're close to our fastest times. Over on page 54, we've given you a bit of a new graph there that shows that some of the work's been processed between 0 and 5 days, with some between 16 and 20. Generally, the work processed in a short amount of time is more simpler work, like wood burning sheds, where the dwellings may be more up towards the 16 days.
Thanks, Kerry. I just got a question from Ross.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Kerry, just regarding the private company that's doing building consents now, or about to, is that happening yet?
Through the chair, they're not approved yet to operate, but they are pretty close to getting the okay, I understand. So they will be able to operate and do any of our building consents that they wish. Yep.
And they'll have their own inspection regime as well.
Completely separate, apart from they'll have to get a PIN from our team, and then they'll just have to let us know when the consent's issued and when the CCC is issued.
Okay, so we'll still have a record of the buildings.
Yeah, they'll have to submit us the documents. Yes.
Yeah. But we'll have no way of I guess, charging for that storage service or whatever.
We will be able to charge administration fee for dealing with paperwork.
Okay, yeah.
And they've currently contacted us to set up a system where we can deal with the paperwork coming from them. So yeah, we'll have to set up a fee to handle that. They will be, sorry, just to expand, they are aiming at the easy work, R1 type simple dwellings, which obviously are straightforward. And yeah, they're not looking at anything that's difficult or alterations or garages or anything like that. They just want simple, straightforward dwellings. But the bulk housing companies.
Yeah, so, sorry, through the chair, so the client will engage them directly. And then they will either turn them down and say, no, it's too hard, or go to council, or be interested to know how that process will work, but.
Through the chair, the client will go to a housing company, and the housing company has a contract with that supplier.
Okay.
So, yeah, they are only aiming at housing company as clients.
Okay, yep.
Yeah.
So
You won't be able to go to them, well, at this stage, they're not saying they'll take customers from out of the country, they're just taking the bulk players.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay, go to Dan Redlands.
How do we go with
Maybe
liability
listening
with
there.
that? If something goes wrong, 5 or 10 years' time, and it seems to be the council, we seems to be the only man standing, so will they come, we have nothing to do with them doing the consenting, but are we liable if something goes wrong long-term in that building? Is there built into the thing a safeguard for us?
Yeah, through the chair, there is, the certifiers do have insurance, and they cover their own liability. So we will have no liability on those jobs at all. That's part of the approval.
So part of the approval was that they do have their own insurance, but that's only as good as while their insurance is running.
Yeah.
And we've had a previous experience in the sector with a company that was a private certifier who eventually folded the company because the risk they were facing was too great, and all the liability went back to council where that company had done work. So.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I think it's important for us when they do, I guess, launch and they start putting all of their comms out to explain all the good stuff that they can do. And I think it's important for us, given if you look at, building consents on time, practically 100% every single month, all the time. Kerry's even provided a graph showing you that we're doing a whole load of consents within 0 to 5 days. So I think it's really important that we still continue to put those messages out there so people do realise that we're not being tarred with everybody else's brush, that they are exceeding all those timeframes and it takes long and it's really expensive. We're far from that on many accounts.
Yeah, fair point.
Yeah, no, just a question, like, how will it be for our staff if there's a, Golden Homes or whomever, get all that market and we left with the other market? Will it have an effect on our staffing, the numbers of staffing, I guess, if there's a significant drop off? And like any job, sometimes the value in your job is when you get a more difficult one, but then you get a few easy ones to, keep you buoyant rather than having difficult, challenging ones all of the time. So, is that a concern from a perspective of, achieving good results, making sure our staff feeling as if they're, performing at the top level, all of those things. So just interested to understand.
Through the chair, I don't think they'll be aiming at our market so much because you're obviously very rural and it's quite expensive to travel to our area, inspections, that sort of thing. And we don't have a huge amount of housing company work. But if obviously we get fees in to pay the bills, so if there's less of those consents, then it will have an effect on our bottom line. But yeah, if they're only aiming at housing companies, then it might have a smaller effect than some other bigger councils, and obviously they're Christchurch based. So if it was me, I'd be aiming at Christchurch work or work in bigger towns. Easier to do those jobs. You'll make more money probably by close, easy work. But there is potential that we could lose quite a bit of work too if they expanded what they were, their customer base.
Amish, did you?
Yeah, I guess councils are in the invidious position of being the supplier of last resort. And so these guys can set themselves up with a certain number of staff to do a certain amount of work, and council then has to flex with the residual amount of work that councils do. So, in many ways, it puts the playing field against councils, because we don't have the option of saying, no, we're not going to do those consents, we haven't got capacity or whatever, we simply have to take whatever comes. But having said that, I believe that we can do a much better job than any private certifier if we put our minds to it and think about what they're offering. You know, and their offer is based on doing consents fast and at a relative cost. I believe we can do that. That might mean that we differentiate what we do in different markets, but I compete on a level playing field basis with them. They do a good job, they're experienced in what they're doing, and there's already some work that Kerry has initiated within the team to look at how we improve. And it was well before this came along, so we've been working on it for quite a while now. But that's showing some promising results, Kerry.
Yeah.
Just before I go to Ross, is this something that has come about through the loosening up of regulations from central government, or is this something that was always there and just someone just picked up on?
The law is always allowed for private certifiers, it's just getting their insurance to cover it, and this company has managed to do that. So it's one of the very few that was able to, what was ever done since the fold up of the last lot of certifiers. The only other privately certifier is the government with Kainora, and they are government backed kind of thing. So this is the very first group that's been able to get that confidence with the insurance maker. That's always been the hard bit, is getting someone to insure you for 10 years in advance.
Ross, did you have a final comment?
Yeah, through the chair, just regarding liability and that LBP role. When LBP first came out, it was like they needed to sign off on stuff, so the liability potentially went to them. So we sort of don't hear, you know, you still need LBP to do stuff, but it's sort of like, and there was responsibility with that when they put their signature on something, but we don't hear of the liability in this setting going back to them, which was my understanding was the whole reason why LBPs were there in the first place, that council would have, oh, it's your signature on there, mate. You did the work, you're the one that's on the can. So is that not happening?
Yeah, through the chair, if there's any things that come up across my desk, I always push it back to the LBP first.
Yeah.
You know, that's they got to sort it out. You know, but it's often the problem when the LBP's folded up, moved to BG or whatever. That's when it really they start blaming the council. So yeah, they are the more difficult ones to resolve. But generally, the LBP, that they need to step up and fix whatever mistakes they've made. You know, I will push back on that. Because the owners often come to us first, but I say we talk to the LBP first, because they're the ones that are doing the work. So yeah, but they do have requirements under the Act to build it to the code or the approved plans. So if they're not, then it's not lawful. Yeah, it says it quite clear that LBPs are responsible for complying with approved plans.
I'll just go to the MVP.
So the LBP is a personal registration of an individual, and under the regulations, the worst thing that can happen to them is that they get struck off as an LBP. The financial liability is a contract between a company normally which employs the LBP, and if that company folds, then the financial liability sits with council as the last man standing. So there's the difference between your personal liability as an LBP. It's not a financial liability. It's simply a personal liability. You can get struck off, but the contract to build is normally between a company that employs the LBPs, or a partnership or whatever. And so if that company is folded, then the proportional liability, if everybody folds, then council's left holding the proportional liability, and that's the financial liability, not the professional liability.
Yeah, if I just sort of finish off that discussion, because I have heard of retired builders who have been chased after in their retirement. I think, oh yeah, I've finished work, but then they have a job 20 years ago, come back at them, put them in the gun again, and they think, wow, when does this ever end? So there have been some LBPs, like I say, that have had their signature on a piece of paper, and then it does come back at them. So it's, yeah, and that's it. I'm saying that's a concern for some LBPs, that they've just built it to the design spec, but then a homeowner down the track can get lawyers involved and, you know, are in the gun. And it's not a nice way to end your retirement or start your retirement with that hanging over. But I hear what you're saying, you know, that
Through the chair, I mean, it is possible for a homeowner to sue an LBP as an individual, but that's a much more difficult process in making Weathertight Homes claim or whatever. And while we're talking this, the vast majority of LBPs stand by their work and you know, and do a good job, and it never gets to this point. But it's always the very small percentage that cause the issues.
thank you.
Did you want to comment?
Yeah, just a comment probably, you know, the launch is coming for this new product, and we probably need to keep our eyes up high to see whether it does have any effect or what that net effect might be. So are we looking to perhaps understand what those numbers might be in a 6-month time frame, or, you know, to see whether it actually puts our business at risk, or, you know, and I perhaps just following from Dan's lead that, you know, is this a time for us to get in early now to do some media about what we do and how we meet and what our stats are here on page 54, you know, like do an early media release ahead of you know, pending competition, I guess, you know, and try and keep the focus on our district. Would be my thought process.
Through the chair, we should better start reporting on the numbers as well, that
Yeah.
we get, that will give us a bit of early heads up, but yeah, I'm keen to do anything that
Yeah,
you think you should do.
I think you're right. I can see a private company wanting to get block bookings with the bulk builders in town, as opposed to running all over the Hiranui.
and Amberley is probably, you know, an achievable outcome from a distant perspective, so we need to probably keep an eye, because that's probably where the block bookings are to come anyway, you know, so I think wouldn't do us any harm to be as strategically as a step ahead of that process.
Is that a finger?
Yeah. Through the chair, I always look at it, similarities, and if you look in my industry with Synlait and Fonterra, you know, imagine if Fonterra's like the district councils with all of the work, and then Synlait comes there and then cherry picks the easy work, the easy suppliers, whatever. But the learnings from that is just concentrate on your core business, do your core business work well. Make sure you know what your customers are doing, and then the other ones, Synlait will either, in that case, will struggle and fall over or do a good job, but there'll probably be outcome at the same time as Synlait does keep pressure on Fonterra. So it is a two-way thing. If we're not delivering to what our customers want, then the other opposition will come in and pick up what we're perceived as not doing. So, you know, I'm not too worried, just focus on what we're doing.
Okay.
Just through the chair, there's one big advantage that they have, is that they can cross borders. So they get one customer which can do the same application across all districts. You know, that's something we probably can't provide unless we get together with our neighbours. So that's probably where a lot of customers like the private sector idea, is because, you know, they can take out a consent with the same person no matter where they build, and anywhere in New Zealand. You know, so that is something that is hard to compete with, but everything else we can definitely compete with. Price and speed and customer service, you know, with that piece of cake, we can do that better. But yeah, it's getting together with the neighbours to offer the same service, and that aspect is a bit harder.
Our full confidence will be good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Going back to the report, you can see there we issued quite a high number of dwellings, saying that we're a bit down from last year. We issued just as many dwellings as last year, so it's kind of a good sign, but it's still less this year than last. CCCs are going pretty good. There's a wee error there, we're actually 100% on time with the CCC approvals under 20 working days. And the average of getting a CCC is 10 working days at the moment, which is considerably less than last year on page 55. RFIs, there was 75% of our consents were issued with RFIs in the last month, which was a little bit higher than last month, but pretty normal. Amount of inspections, we did 350 inspections last month and passed 65 of those, percent of those, so it's not too bad. And on page 56, the value of building work this year, this financial year will be way higher than last year. Currently it's sitting at $93 million of building work in the district, and just in May alone there was $15 million of building work.
So you think you're seeing that the private sector starting to pump? Is that starting to see any changes in what's happening out there?
Through the chair, I haven't really seen any dramatic, because normally it's often dairy sheds, and I really haven't seen too many of those, to be honest. And a lot of sheds these days are exempted if they're under 110 square metres and in a lower wind zone. So we are seeing some, there's signs, but like there's some big investments on wintering barns. You know, one come in for over $1 million for a wintering barn, which is quite unusual. So that's definitely a sign that, you know, picking up, I think. But yeah, it's mainly, from our point of view, it's all in the housing, and Amberley and Hamner majority at the moment. Yeah. But things are costing more. We're issuing less, but things are costing more, so it's no surprise, I don't think. Notice of fixes, we issued a bunch of them in May for a whole range of different things that didn't fit the criteria of building work without not needing a consent. You can see there one hay barn snuck in there over 110 square metres, for example, built without a consent, so now we need to issue a COA on it. Sleep outs that have been built that are under 30 square metres, for example, but posted in their own height to the boundaries, so we have to issue a COA on those. Several small buildings that have sanitary fixtures in them that needed a consent. If they didn't have the sanitary fixtures in, they wouldn't have needed consent. So yeah, people are getting caught out by all the fine print, which is a shame because it's just, yeah, painful process to go through a COA on a building that has been built by someone that potentially is not worried about code compliance so much. Yeah, and the results of those fixes comes through on the certificates of acceptance coming in. So we only received 2, issued 3, but we'll expect a lot of those will come through. Well, some of them will come through as certificates of acceptance. We're starting to let people know if the building's in such poor state, then we tell them, you know, not worth applying for COA because you're never going to get a code certificate of acceptance for it because the building's just not built to standard. It's better to pull it down rather than spend money on getting it up to speed. And that's why some of them are getting stuck in that green line. The ones that are getting stuck in the system are generally the ones that are just built to such a poor standard that we can't issue it.
You could ask, Andrew brought up a point earlier on around camping grounds, where you're camping and some people that are struggling could be anti-problem. Is there any sign of that sort of coming through the head, if people are just trying to get a roof over their head, or is it just general, someone's doing up the old house down the back?
Through the chair, it's that. It's people just trying to get a roof over their head. It's someone potentially got a bus and they want a roof over it, to build a roof over it, and they need a little room for the toilet, in there, and then they need another place to wash their dishes and build another room there. So that sort of stuff. It's all a bit of a rickety mess, but probably okay for that owner. But you know, someone makes a complaint, we've got to go in there. You know, yeah, and that's how they end up with these. But yeah, there's a lot of that. Just someone trying to do something, yeah, It's-
a step up from under the bridge.
Yeah, it's better, definitely better than under the bridge, but it's nowhere near what code would ask for, yeah. But they're happy enough, yeah, so it's a bit tricky, really, yeah. Yeah, and then over on 57, just a bit more expanded on the granny flats, I think this is really interesting. This is where LBPs are really gonna have to take responsibility for things. And just to highlight, the NES has come out, which is the National Environmental Standard for the planning exemption. And it's listed out some criteria there on the left column of what you're going to need to do to fit into that exemption. And the interesting thing is some of it doesn't align with the building exemption. And you can use one or the other at this stage of the proposal. It's still for submissions, so this may change, but you could use one or the other. So you could use the NES exemption for the planning aspects and then just take out a building consent for the building if it didn't fit the building exemption criteria. So say if you wanted to build a double-storey granny flat, you could use the planning exemption, but you couldn't use the building exemption because that must be single-storey. Single story is not mentioned in the planning one. So, you know, our submission's been prepared at the moment, which will come in front of you, I think. But it's these sort of things that just seem a bit unusual. And to me, it should align. The advantage, though, if it can be used separately, then if you have someone wanting to build their own granny flat, then they can just take out a building consent for it, but they'll still be allowed to build it, which is quite a good option. Because that may be cheaper, build your own granny flat and take out a consent than employing an LBP, which would cost probably more than a building consent. So, but yeah, I'll just highlight things down there that we have to look for, because someone that's looking to apply for a granny flat is going to have to apply for a PIM, and they're going to have to tell us these basic criteria. And we're going to say, yep, we're all good to go, and then they can go ahead and build it without any inspections or processing or checking of code. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, and yeah, so that's going to be in 2026 that we're going to see a bit of that, I think, once submissions are done. And also on page 57, the 24-hour consenting. Now, yeah, I've been trying to get this off for years, as you probably know, but we've now figured out a way where it can really work, and it seems to be working quite well. We're trialling with 2 designers at the moment. And we can get those consents out in 24 hours, no problem at all, with a previous PIM.
Sorry, for a layman like me, can you just explain that? This 24-hour scheme, I'm sorry, I'll be honest, I haven't quite got my head around it.
Sorry about that. So with the 24-hour scheme, we've asked LBP designers to apply for a project information memorandum at the early stages of the design. So in other words, when they've got their site plan elevations and floor plan done, they can apply for a PIM. And then we can tell them about all the things that might be right or wrong with that. Planning rules, stormwater, sewer, accession plans, all that sort of stuff. And it's the biggest stuff that generally stops people from building things, you know, planning breach, need a reasonable consent, site coverage, or my stormwater needs this. So they'll get all that information up on an early stage. PIM will be sent out to them practically 5 days later. They'll be able to sort out that information, and then they can apply for their building consent only, which we'll process in 24 hours, as long as there's no RFIs or anything like that. So taking out the PIM aspect of the process is definitely going to speed it up, because the PIM process involves about 7 or 8 different people, and the building consent process only involves one person. So definitely we can get that one person doing that in 24 hours. It's more difficult to get a whole bunch of teams doing something in 24 hours. So we've worked out that if we keep the PIM process the same, we issue that in the normal time frame, that sorts out a lot of the major issues, and then they can apply for the building consent. And we can sort out the code issues within 24 hours, hopefully.
You're saving them getting too far down the track through a series of processes before they find there's an obstacle.
Yeah, because often when the client put their building consent in, they're ready to go in 20 days' time. And you know, they get disappointed when they feel like, oh, I've got recession plane breach, you know. So we want to give them the expectation that when they apply for their building consent, they can start in 24 hours' time. Because that's, from one of the clients we've got, that's his main benefit, that he can say, I'm gonna apply for my consent, and I can start digging out my foundations 24 hours later, and he can schedule all his contractors in. And he said that's the main benefit from his point of view, knowing that he can start work, because he's got everything lined up, everything, for the next 6 months, he's got everything lined up. And he said that's what's the selling point for him, you know, yeah. And so his designer is applying early on with him, because the plans are all drawn up at that stage. And then while they process the PIM, he's drawing up the plans, he's getting the PIM back, he's adding that into the plans for the BC, and then we're processing that. And then it's just building code compliance stuff, you know, and you know, if we've got minor things that need to be done, we can just give them a ring saying, can we add that smoke detector in? Yeah, boom, we can just draw that in, and it keeps going. You know, we want to work with them to get it out in 24 hours. We don't want to put it on hold, and then we won't achieve that 24 hours for the client, you know.
That sounds like a good thing, yeah.
So yeah, it seems to be working quite good. It's only for simple housing up to R2, so single story or double story dwellings with no fire ratings, but yeah, that's the bulk of our work. And then over page 58. Sorry.
Chair, I just note that in light of our previous discussion, that one of the proposed advantages of somebody else coming into the market is they can do consents for their group home builders in 2 days. We're already doing them in 1 day. So, you know, you talk about how we can compete. There's an area where we're already getting.
And on page 58, the government's introducing some more legislation called the overseas product proposal, and it's going to allow more overseas products to be imported into the company, and which will reference overseas standards and quality assurance systems. So they're going to release a document to say these standards, these overseas standards are okay, as long as the product complies or be tested to those standards, then they'll be able to use them. And so that'll hopefully, they say, will increase the number of options available. So we're yet to see how that will affect it, but it'll be things like interior linings and claddings and that sort of thing will potentially come in from overseas. And MB have also given us notice that they will be requesting inspection timeframe data. So they're wanting inspections to be 80% of inspections to be booked in within 3 days of the requested date. So that means if someone rings in and wants an inspection tomorrow, then we have to be able to schedule that within 3 days of tomorrow to be complying with what they need. So yeah, we should be able to, I think we're already complying with this because we can normally book in the next day or the day after. It's only going to get a little bit tricky for places like remote Cheviot, where we only go there Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we may be at the limit of 3 days there, but we should still be within 3 days. But yeah, we're going to have to report that data to MB. And just a lovely photo there on page 58 of the next stage of the retirement village going ahead and moving their kit to get on to the next stage, which is good signs. And that's building report done. And more on 59, because I know I'm going on too long, man, aren't I?
You best ask this time. Chairperson, I'm
Am I going on too long?
We're not missing much yet.
Okay, cool. Rightio. Property, there's all the planner there with all their current work underway, which I don't think there's too much new there. It's current work. On page 60.
Sorry. A question for him as well. The first two items around the condition reports and things, does this not tie in with, you know, we were talking about halls and builders come under their own and that? Is that holding up that process in any way, or is it two separate processes we've got going?
It's two separate processes. Those reports are done in isolation every time they're needed. Yeah, so we've done all our reports on all our buildings at the moment. We're just updating them now. So yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, over on page 60, the limbs, quite a low level of limbs, which generally means a low number of sales. So yeah, but still being processed really quickly on 3 days average. over the page on 61, social housing wait list. We have less waiting in for Amberley now, but still quite high demand. I had a bit of a tidy up with the waiting list, and some people have taken their names off. But yeah, Amberley's still a bit of a hot spot for housing needed. Occupancy rate of all our social housing is close to 100%. It's just the ones that have been renovated or altered that are not occupied. We're still doing our annual inspections of our rental units that are underway, and a bit of normal vandalism there with broken windows and things. Nothing too out of the ordinary. And then over on page 62, we've done a bit of maintenance at the Pines Camp with the showers that were had state repair and also the roof. And we've also painted the Pemberley Springs Memorial Hall walls and feats. And we've also done some work on page 63 with the Harden Scout Den with some skylight replacements where the skylights are all gone no good, so we replaced those. The road stoppings, I think the new one, the Motnau Beach joining landowner wanted to stop the road. That's now no longer going ahead, so that one can be crossed off, but everything else is still to be resolved.
Just a comment, it would be nice to see Kilmarnock Road taken off.
Yeah.
I'll say
Not
that.
fast. Yep, maybe next month.
I think that is all from Tim Carey. Any questions? No, thank you very much to you and your team, and lots of very good looking grants there, Carey. Oh, no, stand
So
by.
I'm just looking at the vandalism in October. Is that, are we talking 80 what, or is it $70,000?
That was for the, oh, sorry.
Queen Mary, yeah, sorry, broken relative, cost of board up access points. Is that?
Through the chair, that's for the fire damaged shed that we had to clean up and dispose of. It cost that much to asbestos.
Come through.
Yeah, it
Wow.
was a bit of a dirty demolition, that one. It all had to go to Cape Valley.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a hell of a lot of money though.
Yeah.
Okay, oh yeah, good on you, thank you.
Okay, if we could now turn to page 64. Dan.
Okay.
Yes, I'll crack into the amenities report. All the details in the planner, but I'll go through it with the graphs the next few pages. So going to page 65. In terms of the mowing, obviously growth's slowed down big time, which is great if you're a mowing contractor. But they're keeping busy doing edging, spraying, and mowing obviously where they can. A few issues with just grass and things like caught up about just keep the job nice and tidy. Moving to page 66. One of the things that the team does is lots of inspections.
Sorry, Ross.
Yeah, you can jump in.
It's lucky I've got a spotter.
Yeah, so through the chair, back at page 65, just the comment at the bottom, two failed for windows.
Oh, windows.
Can you explain that?
For windows or windrows?
Well, yeah, what does that mean?
Clumps of grass. It obviously doesn't mean windows as.
Okay, so it's windrows. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Well picked up. I thought I'd get one glossing over that one, but no.
If I had a comment on page 65, the graph on the reactive jobs, I'd say good on cold and getting up there and rivaling Hammer.
Which will give you rain. Yeah. Yeah, so on page 66, one of the things that the team does is do lots of inspections, obviously Parks Reserve, so this year to date 260, but yeah, I guess it's just pleasing overall, it's just showing everything's well maintained and sort of highlighting all the work the team does to keep on top of the maintenance, undertaking 1,200 odd tasks, and it's obviously showing when we do these inspections and find that everything's in pretty good nick. Moving to page 67, with not so good news is just continued damage and vandalism. A bit frustrating when you got April, May, pretty much the identical thing. regarding the Emily Beach toilets, we'll have to come up with something there. I've got my own suspicions, but that's okay. Anyway, that's been done, so. we'll have to come up with it.
Is that, yeah, around the beaches and that, the end of this morning, it's come up in several sections of the reports. Is there any thinking that it's all interconnected with certain people or groups, or is this just happening from all directions?
Yeah, I guess we'll just be speculating to.
Yeah.
I think, Mr. Chair, that's always the challenge when we start to produce the data. Whereas probably in years gone by, we hear about it from 1 month to the next and kind of it goes out of your mind, but when you keep seeing it every single month, you always
Join the
look at
dots.
that. Yeah, you're trying to join the dots, but we haven't, there's not really any dots to join really, at the moment, anyway.
Yes,
Sorry,
sorry,
Ross.
through the chair, just a question regarding rest areas on either state highways or on the roads that we maintain. So is the maintenance of them come back to us on our roads? Any rest areas? I'm just thinking of, there's a few dotted around the place, who maintains or mows around, if there's a picnic table there, and is there a policy that we maintain the ones on our roads? Or is it that community maintains?
Well,
them?
Mr. Chair, I think it all depends. Now, there certainly is, there is part of the, I forget the code, but there's certainly a work category within NZTA where NZTA will part fund some roadside maintenance of lay-bys or rest areas. But that was one of the full guys that we had when we recut the roading budget. So we haven't upped the ante, I suppose, on any of those rest areas. So the majority of them are down to the locals to maintain them. But there are, some that will be, if they're in the state highway corridor, then it'll be up to the state highway contractor.
So what you're saying is there's no funding from NZTA for our rest areas?
Well, Mr. Chair, it's about prioritisation of the roading money that we do get, and we decided to allocate none to that, but to drainage and everything else we do. As you might remember through the long-term plan, we did set aside some money, but when we didn't get the money that we were after, that was a service we were trying to offer that we'd never offered before.
Yeah.
So that was one of the first ones that.
Yeah, so to keep them tidy, we're relying on local. Thank you.
Excellent. The next couple of pages, there's quite a few photos of some of the works the team has done over the month, which is really pleasing to see. And some good maintenance undertaken. So, welcome any questions on those photos or anything else in the minister's report.
Looks good in the Buxton camp. Just I hope the sea doesn't come around and take it all away. That's all.
If there's no questions, I can move on to the program and capital report. So, program and capital, so you're getting close to the end of the financial year, so only a couple of weeks to go, which is great. But yes, at the moment, doing a lot of work chasing up committed costs. That's the big driver at the moment. A lot of work done that actually hasn't been paid for yet. So chasing up supplies, getting all these in the system. Some people don't want to get paid for doing a job, but that's their business, not mine. Anyway, we're just doing that and going through the process. But regardless, we've still got a few contracts which are still ongoing, so I'll go through some of the detail in the report. So on page 71, the job at the top is the new bulk water main feeding from the Kowai treatment up to Seadown. And that photo there is taken on Cruiser Terrace Road, where they've had the trench to the road there. So that bit is completed, and they've also trenched down Amberley Beach. That bit's also completed. Look, the asphalt getting started today, so the traffic management will be removed. So now they're going through the farmland block, the paper road, to join up those pipes. So they're working on that at the moment.
Is that at the corner of the Hershey Terrace, Amber Beach Road?
Correct. Yeah.
So do they continue on into the paper road of Hershey Terrace somewhere?
Correct. Yep.
And then come up a gully? Where do they come back out onto Beach Road?
I wouldn't know the exact point.
But it's a few sections, a few blocks up.
Yeah, quite a way to go.
Okay.
So, and then, yeah, they connect back into the road here, the paved road ends up, yeah. So, yeah, like I said, that, progressing really well. Any other questions about 71, from over to 72? Page 72, yes, increased storage capacity done. That job's referring to the new pump shed going in Waikato on Wicks Road. So that job's pretty much done and dusted in terms of building the pump shed. Next, 2 weeks' time, we've got the new financial year. So once we get the new financial year comes along, we've got funding to build the reservoir. So like the pump shed's done, just need to get the power on, commission that, and we can start the reservoir next financial year, which will be great to get that one done and dusted.
Beside the pump shed.
So just get started to go through the process of what size.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and it's a new pipe. I mean, this one here is outside the opposite Catholic Church, I think, is the picture there on 72. But is that new pipe going all the way along Waikato Road?
And going the other way towards Waikato.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this coming financial year, we've got another set of money to carry that pipe on. But yeah, the plan is that new pipe will away from
Yeah, okay, that's cool. Awesome.
So,
Yep.
Work in progress, can't do it in 1 year, so
Yep.
every year have a
Yep.
crack.
I'm with you, thank you.
Any other questions on 72 before I move on?
And just a pushing the product, a while ago, there were savings around buying plastic things and putting all my things flour. Have we, like the family runs back or what, have we got a pretty standard recipe now for all this sort of stuff? You know?
So, and everything's, yeah. I guess the big thing for maintenance afterwards, we can put it in the same suite of design that the guys maintain, so. Moving to.
Just a question on the, good to see the footpaths getting started in Cheviot.
Yep.
I just noticed on, the one up by the council, there was a piece of no footpath. I was wondering, is that going to get done? I just noticed when I drove up the street, there's a area about here to the wall long, it's just no footpath.
On Fergus.
On the other side of the road, it's saying that there's like a 6
Yeah,
metre
the
section
council
that goes
yard
over.
is, yeah, it's over the road really from the council yard along there.
I don't believe that was in the report that went to the committee last month. So
I was driving with the contractor, I said, oh, there's a piece missing.
But I agree, it's probably an opportune time to look at it. So I guess the shedding works that have started at Cadman Street this week.
Yeah.
So they're doing there in the bin, and then they've got the 2 other sections, which they're hoping to carry on to in July. So once we can find out how much it costs to
So
get that
I've
bit
just
done.
a question on the funding of it, because there was a footpath there. Is it under the maintenance? Because footpath goes along, then it's just hasn't been maintained, and there's just no footpath. Then it carries on. So it's not like it's a new footpath. There was a footpath there. So does that come under our district-wide maintenance? Because we've already had a footpath put there. It's disappeared.
Mr. Chair, we'll have a look. We'll have a look.
Yeah, have a look and just that's the questions I just asked.
No, it's good to be aware. Thank
I
you.
just want to raise it if you say it, Rosie.
And moving to page 73, yeah, sticking with footpaths. Yeah, the footpaths by Carrier coming along really well. Yeah, on track for completion. 10 days, so yeah, going well, and yeah, it's looking really sharp actually. So
Yeah, really good.
it's done well.
I just asked a question around footpaths, and maybe you or maybe Charlie's behind you. I couldn't help but notice that the road going along by Ravensdown around there, there's cones along at least half of it, just about, directing one lane right across and the footpath right across. And I thought, gee, what's this major bit of work going on? There's one house concreting from the driveway, which is finished, across to the road, 2 metres. And yet the other houses further down are putting complete driveways out to the road, nothing. And I can't see the purpose of the cones. And I thought, is that something that, I hate to think it's something that an obstacle we're putting in front of them. If it's the building company wants to pay some, men of work or something, a lot of money on the price of the house, that's up to them. But I just thought, where does that come from?
Well, there's a hotline for that now.
Yeah.
But no, so the person doing we put a traffic management plan in, and don't specify how they're gonna comply with the code of practice. So they would have.
And as I
put
say,
forward that this is
all the other ones down the track, just part of the concrete truck there, it's pretty obvious that, yeah.
So
I
they
guess
will
I'll
be their
figure it
traffic
out.
management plan, we don't tell them how to do it, they put a plan how they're gonna achieve safety requirements, so.
It just seemed that perhaps it was that he was the one complying with the plan and the others were just getting in and getting out. Just an observation. That's,
Just a question, where does the Mendip Bridge, does it sit under road or does it sit under?
We'll check out the roading, but you can probably ask your question since it's kicking. Excellent. Moving on to page 74. And yeah, the photo of that hole in ground water that's in Cannon Springs. So that's the upgrade of the flex stream culvert. So replacing the existing 600 mil with 2 3x1 boxes. That's a real weak point in our stormwater system, which has been on the cards since 2015. I believe the modelling report was done. So those large culverts were put in last week, Thursday and Friday, and then the backfill of the road was reopened on Friday, which is great. So the contractor now is going through doing the roading reinstatement, so they backfilled it to get the road opened up. To finish it, they're doing the roading reinstatement and they're pouring the concrete aprons this week. So that one's getting really long at steam, which is pleasing to see. And that's me, the next few pages.
It's just reminded me here, and probably should have reported earlier, but where it talks about the installation of the solar bollard lighting linking, and behind Woolworths. Someone stopped me the other day and just said, thanks to the council for doing that, because it's just made a difference to the walking accessibility. I think they've been over here and then walking home, and they just thought it was wonderful. So it's just reminded me, and I just wanted to pass that comment on. Thank you.
yeah, I've had plenty of comments around that too. It's been a very successful solution.
Yeah.
Just carrying on from that, who pays for the maintenance? Where does that maintenance fit under the council? So even like the speed control, like the one up here, I know it's not working this morning. The lines have got, do we do the maintenance of that, or is it?
I know that one, Vince, seems to be intermittent, because I've reported it a couple of times, and then next time we go past, it's working. They know about it, and I think, I don't know whether it's been handed over, what the Lions put it there, but I think the blooming thing, every time they go to fix it, it's working again, isn't it? Seems to be.
Just I was asking because I was asked by the group that are looking at putting one in Cheviot, who's going to be responsible for the maintenance? But they pay all the capital and get it up there. Who maintains it?
Well, that one down there, I hope it's not a bullet hole, but it's got a hole in it. That's been the problem with it. We'll say it's a stone hole, maybe. But
What happens to the others around the district if one doesn't stop working?
That's why Carry One's the same. It has had no maintenance, and it is a bit intermittent as well. So I think if we found out whose issue it is to fix, we probably need to get them to look at.
Yeah, the Lions Club are looking at one, and it was just a question they asked. We're going to fund putting it all up, then who maintains it?
be difficult because it's on Waka Kotahi's corridor, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, Mr. Chair, but this has been a long-standing issue that we've had, and I think of talking to the roading team a while back, and because most of them have been funded by local groups, chances are that we would have to take over the maintenance. Now, I know that Charlie's been pushing hard to get NZTA to do that in many instances, and they have. But if we want a formal programme, yeah, it just feels like it's probably we're going to have to step up.
Because and indirectly those lighting, you're just talking about the supermarket, it's just an issue who then pays for maintaining it.
I know for a fact the ones that were put in at Waikari, on the state highway, they were funded by NZTA.
Funded by or maintained by?
No, funded by,
Yes.
they were installed by NZTA because the local lines were considering doing it at the time, but they didn't need to because NZTA requested that because of the.
I know when you do anything on dock land and you put everything up there on dock land, you sign an agreement that you're gonna maintain it and take it away at the end. So docks, they cover that, like the Belmar lookout, the toilets, anything we do. Our Lions Club signs an agreement that we put it up there, then when we leave, we maintain it and take it away. So
I'm wondering whether we have similar problems. There's a lot of them outside the schools, thinking of Cheviott's got the solar ones and that. I wonder who put them, the education department, Pococo Tower. But I suppose they're a similar thing. Almost need somebody that maintains, does the loop, make sure everything is working.
Yeah, just asking because I was asked.
it's like, it's also like those security cameras that go up from the police. Our Lions Clubs put them up and we seem to get to maintain to fix them when they break.
I'm sure Charlie heard that, just popped it in.
Anyway, the remainder of the report, yes, the next couple of pages, just a few recently completed projects, then the appendix showing some of the other completed projects for the financial year to date. If you want any questions on any of the report?
Just, you said you want to touch on, is there anything significant amongst the carryover?
Yeah, there'll be 6 or 7 projects. You know, there's a few for different reasons. We've got a water softening plant. Unfortunately, when we put the new bore in, the test the new bore, we had to do a lot of sampling. We're actually still sampling, so we've still got a winter time to take about 6 months. Well, it took us about 4 months to get the bore done. Another few months of sampling, so that we obviously can't build this year, so that it's get carried over. In Harden, we need to desludge the wastewater ponds. We haven't got enough room, so we had to purchase land. It's obviously going through the whole land acquisition. It's taken a while. We'll need to carry a bit of money over for the reservoirs up in Seadown, just because the landowner has changed his agreement a couple of times on location. And then there'll be a couple other minor ones. They're the major costs. And the Queen Mary South as well, the demolition of that building. So we're still trying to find a solution which is at cheapest cost. So making sure we get that right before we actually go ahead with anything to be carried for that as well. They're the major ones. There might be a couple other facts and points, but not yet.
So there's no major surprises or whatever.
I don't think there'll be
It's just things
surprises.
we're working through.
There'll be a decent amount of value, but there won't be many projects. And like I said, the reason is because a lot of these ones, Queen Mary, for example, $1 million. Well, we don't want to spend any money until we've got the right solution. The water softening plants, obviously, maybe about 800,000, but similarly, we can't do a design until we've got the source water characteristics. So the value will be a lot, but not many projects.
Makes sense. Mara.
Did I just need to say we're having to buy land for Harden wastewater to comply with consent conditions to discharge the lead?
So we Harden wastewater, we need to desludge it.
Yeah.
And the cheapest way is to pretty much leave the sludge on site, so put it in geobags. What we've done at Hamden is put them in geobags, and then the water sort of settles out, we pump back to ponds. Unfortunately, our footprint's really tight, and there's no area to put the geobags. So the other option would be to pretty much pump it to Cape Valley, which is crazy expensive. So we've managed to purchase a wee bit of land beside it, and then we're going to put the geobags there. So we're just going through the moment, putting the tender documents together for that.
So if we want to have further discussion about that, we need to do it publicly excluded.
100%, I understand that, just working that through in my mind, thank you.
Very good. Are there any further questions for Dan? Thank you very much, Dan. Great job there again. And I think we can go with Charlie, lunch. Second shift taking up before we finish. Back to page 58. Page 38, which one are we going to do first? The Yeah. Your own report, and then you put it to your second page.
Afternoon, everybody. On page 38, going through the finances, we're sitting at about 75% of total budget spend at the moment. There's still quite a lot of expenditure that has been accounted for by committed works that haven't been claimed as of yet. So we're looking to basically fully exhaust that budget by the end of the financial year, just with the work that's sitting in currently accepted and not yet claimed. We have allocated out the additional 491,000 of extra funding that we've got with the resilience focus. So we've split this up into several roads that either require drainage improvements or culvert renewals. So that work has been allocated out to the contractors. So we started on Staggins Spey. So there's a few culverts to replace up Staggins Spey, and moving on to Inland Kaikoura, Leslie Hills and Rampaddock. With an additional top up there for the wheelie diggers to keep going into the new year. So like I said there's been some late claim items that have appeared in this month's claim. So Lake Sumner, there was a slip in December that's been claimed now, and there's still the large amount of works on Modern Road South, the rehab works to be claimed. There was a $782,000 claim presented for the month of May. Of that, we've processed that and finalised that today. Moving into our service requests, May was a really busy month for service requests. All of the rain and weather event at the start of the month triggered a lot of that, with 134 received. It's probably the biggest by a considerable margin since I've been in this chair anyway for a month. And most of that again was still focused on the unsealed road, looking at potholes and corrugations where some sections of the unsealed network is unravelled, pending metal essentially. Moving into maintenance patrol, as you can see there's some significant volume of work. Did quite a lot of pothole repairs after the rain. We're out and about doing a lot of small potholes, a little bit of edge break, and replacing quite a few of the marker pegs. Moving into our routine drainage, this has been our first month to highlight some success around the wheeled excavator program that we've got going on at the moment. Obviously I won't spend too much time talking about it because there's a report to speak about it afterwards. It's just to highlight that we've covered some significant kilometres in terms of meterage. We've done it just over 150 k's in the first month. And every culvert that's been down each one of those roads has an assessment on them. So it's looking to provide us a good forward work program for culvert renewals and inspections or clearing, hopefully in the new financial year.
Charlie, that's it. That is, and we won't preempt the report, that is a significant amount of kilometres. Do these guys, to the party reporting or whatever, they like get the camera with them or whatever for anything else they come across?
Yeah, so they've got a good working relationship with the person in my team who's responsible for their day-to-day activities. So if they come across any issues or have any questions or need to get in touch with any landowners, and that's all done through our team, as well as culverts essentially is what they find, culverts that need to be replaced or that have collapsed. So they're all lodged in an assessment in RAM, so we can build a program of works rather than responding to one-off here and there. We'll talk more about that very soon. Going into seal pavement maintenance, the weather event obviously had some impact across several sections of the network, both sealed and unsealed. The contractor had a resource allocated to assist the LMP, so they had quite a few teams out and about erecting flooding signage and going out to Inland Road, changing some traffic management setups and making sure any events that weren't responded to or resolved on the day were correctly posted. So we'll be aware of the site on Inland Road that's currently posted, which is programmed for repair this month. Quite a few slips. Glendoo Road was quite a large slip. It had a main power stay, which made it a little bit more complicated for them. But overall, I think they responded to the event really well across the sealed network. We've just got a little bit more work to do with what we're going to do with the work that shakes out of it. Moving into unsealed, so Stonyhurst, got a little bit of a hiding. There's some scouring there that's been tidied up now, and Blythe Road with one section that still needs to be tidied up. It's on the straight. I think we'll all know about that section as well. In addition to what's shown here, Kawara Road has also had some love over the last couple of weeks. I haven't put any photos in here because it's not yet complete, but the wheeled excavators have been on Kawara Road at the moment, fixing up a lot of the historic scouring and all the low points. So from about halfway through Kawara Road, it's been tidied up, and the second half is coming, and it looks really good. And they've done a really good job up there. So now it just needs some material on it, which won't happen until the new financial year.
Well, that's it. So Ross had a
Yeah, just regarding an overlay, it's when you overlay a road. And I'm just thinking of like the Inland Road, which was never designed back in the day to have the vehicles going on it now. So I'm assuming when we do a complete overlay, that it will be engineered for today's vehicles.
Yes, through the chair. Yeah. So when we do an overlay, if we do an overlay, it's one type of rehab that we can do. What we're doing now is evaluating all the test pits. So we dig down, a metre by metre, we see what the pavement structure is, and then we determine, based on the results from the test pits and the data analysis and sampling that we do, we determine what treatment type is the best option for now. So it's the same as Rotherham Road South, that got a granular overlay, but there's some sections on like Inland Road that it may be better for us to do an area-wide stabilisation rather than small patches. And that will come out of whatever the test pits say, essentially.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that any work done now is designed for today's. But I sort of have in the back of my mind that eventually the whole of the Inland Road will be brought up to carry today's weights as it slowly picks up, because if you've been for a drive late, you'll see the damage that the modern trucks are doing to the road, and it's comforting, I guess, to know that any work that's done will be for that weight loading, that you won't have to go back to that.
Yes, it's exactly right. So all of the designs will be engineered for whichever is the most appropriate based on the pavement structure. I mean, the Inland Road is probably a little bit unique because it's had many overlays in the nectar time, and I mean, none of it was done particularly well. There was a lot of stabilisation that happened there that only got first coats, it never got the second coat. So there is some premature failings on Inland Road of historic repairs, essentially. But yeah, with what we're doing, I think there's about 2.5 k's of rehabilitation planned, and then that will filter down in the coming years.
Sally, can I ask, Kaiwara Road, presumably there's still gates, many years since I've been through, presumably there's gates and things still on. Are they all, people aren't battling with an old Taranaki gate or something to get through there? Is that side of it all up to spec?
Mr. Chair, there is a gate. There is some signage requirements on those gates that there currently isn't. To be honest, it's probably doing us a favour right now, but it'll be a conversation after the road's been brought back up to the standards around what level of service we anticipate on keeping on Kaiwara Road, and then how we're going to manage those conversations with the farmers on their gates.
Because traffic may just increase with people realising,
This is the double-edged sword,
Exactly.
is you want a road in better condition and you can expect more traffic on it, so.
All right.
Sorry, can I just go back to the Inland Road, and I'm going to review Dan. Doug Simpson phoned me a couple of weeks ago and I passed his details on to you. So and I'm not sure whether you're able to make contact with him, but is the section of road that we're talking, Inland Road, we're talking about going to also incorporate the water table and the spring, I think. So so that work will be captured in this dig out and an improvement that we're just talking about now. Is Doug aware of that?
Chair, yes, so Danny passed those details for me to contact him, so I'm in
Okay,
contact with him.
you're in contact with him, perfect, that's great, thank you, the system works, thank you.
So if we're talking about an inland road and you big trucks, it's gonna take years to put this right, doesn't it? If it's, because I remember going through, on the bike through State Highway 57, Pongaroa through to Waipac. I just didn't realise how bad the logging trucks had just demolished that road, but apparently through provincial growth fund and that, from what I hear, it's all been finally done, but so you got no idea how bad, man, they can get. It was just, it was worse than a metal road. It was an ex-tar seal road, probably similar, built in the 40s or 50s for TK Bedfords, and then had logging, and it was just horrendous.
Probably while we're talking about the inland road then, so at the moment, as you know, the Conway River Bridge is posted, is restricted in weight. So once when that gets renewed, that bridge, and it gets opened up to all traffic again, then you got all the heavies coming, potentially more heavies coming back through that road, doing more damage to the road. So then you've got to accelerate, not only have you got the bridge to pay for, you then got this accelerated program of work, because the road isn't constructed to deal with the current traffic potential. So it's all these things that are sort of going on in the back of our minds about, and it's not just relevant only to that road, it's relevant to many roads. It's just not built to withstand the amount of, or the weight of traffic that they take.
Right, so finishing off on the unsealed network, again, we've still applied quite a lot of material this year, and I think we would agree that it's probably still not enough. There's still some areas that still need metal that we're now doing at the end of this month to bring forward from to do it in advance of next year. So we'll start doing it this month and be charged for it next month, just to try and get on top of some of the isolated issues earlier. So the contractors worked with us on that, and it's a really good outcome for all of us. Going into the rehab sections, as I alluded to before, all of the rehab sites for this current LTP are being dug now. So all of the test pits are being dug. We've just finished Medbury Road, the section of Medbury Road that's up for rehab this coming year. Heading to Mutnell Beach, also due for rehab this coming year. So those test pits will be finished up probably by the end of this week, and then we'll be in the designing and planning stage for the rehabs, aiming to have one done before Christmas and one done after Christmas. So they will be first off the ranks. Not a lot in terms of.
I just on the Mutnell Road, I've just had a few people complaining about how it's becoming so smooth, the tar seal, and with all the tree shading, you know, it's a sitter for an accident with the ice. Because we did do quite a bit of tree removal a few years ago, but there's still some shady spots which just stay wet all day, and the frost, and that is quite treacherous, and the road's gone very smooth. Just want to raise it.
I think that section that you're talking about, I think, is where we still grip as well. So that basically that whole section is up for rehab. So it's due to get a new surface.
No, that's what I was just saying. If you're doing it, just have a surface which can handle that shading.
Yeah, so they'll probably go, and again, speaking out of turn because it'll be designed, but it'll probably go to a slightly larger chip to have water to be able to sit a little bit lower in the chip profile. But I mean, that'll all shake out in the design.
Well, I wonder how hard it is to get rid of the shading. Because if we don't get rid of that, we're just going to be having the problem.
Through the chair, we're making contact with lots of property owners who have trees either shading the road or affect sight lines. Essentially, it would just be a bigger pot of money. I mean, we could go and partner with them and say we'll trim them on a 45. We'll do it as part of a work package, but again, it requires someone to foot the bill for it. And then
there's a separate conversation around whether or not we should be involved in trimming people's private trees. And then that's a whole nother conversation.
We just don't want road accidents either, you know. Yeah.
Yep, so hopefully in the next few months, the next couple of iterations of this report, I'll be able to provide some updates around the rehab progress, where we're looking and what sort of indicative timelines we're going to be looking at. Should be really good. Moving into damage and vandalism, there wasn't any reported vandalism through our asset management software that came through as vandalised, which is good. And then into our corridor management, again, pretty much comparable with the last few months. There was 8 defects found as part of warranty inspection, so they've been required to fix them. So just so you know that we're out there checking these things as well. And looking forward, the transport procurement strategy features quite highly on my work plan. This is an endorsed transport procurement document that we have advertised on our website that essentially unlocks funding from NZTA. And we're required to update it every 6 years, and that's due for an update by the end of this year. So that's something that we are working on, as well as a number of other documents like AMPs and bits and bobs, which I'll give you an update for in the months coming. And there's some further information there around the Wheelie Digger program and the work that it's captured as part of the Wheelie Digger program. So so you can see what we spent roughly on them to date and how much work they've picked up to date in their travels. Just thought that would be a useful indication for you all around how we are trying to manage value for money. And that concludes my roading report. However, I've just got a question.
That's just on the roading on the Mendip Bridge. What's happening there?
Very good. Thanks for asking. So the Mendip Bridge, we've got initial sketches. So those sketches have been sent out to 2 contractors to price. And as soon as we've got pricing back, then we will hopefully undertake some repairs. So we've had all of the initial engineering work was produced by WSP, and they've sent us designs to work with. Those designs were of a good enough standard to be able to send to some contractors to get basically to query their methodology and then to price on. So we're just waiting for pricing to come in.
Is the bridge open or closed at the moment?
Closed. One of the piers is dislodged off the abutment and is currently sitting in the river. But the actual structure itself is pretty sound.
I was talking to the owner last Sunday actually, and she offered. I said, that they could put a bulldozer in there. They've got their own equipment and move the river across. She said that she didn't see that would be too big a problem for them because they've got staff there and that. So it'd be in our interest, I think, is that if we could keep the water away from that bit of the structure. So if you want to, you could contact them at Mendip, and I'm pretty sure they'll be obliging because it's in their interest. I've talked to the owner, so she knows about it.
Okay, look, before we go to your bigger report, we finished our discussion items. If I could have a mover and a second that we accept the discussion items. So if we go to page 85, Shelley can tell us some more work.
So this report was just intended to give you an overview on the Wheeled Excavator program. As you all know, if you cast your mind back, there was a trial run and a pilot run, both of which demonstrated some really good outcomes for the network. So what I just wanted to go over was how we chose who was working on our network, their current progress and what we're looking at going forwards. So we went out to market essentially. We had, I think, 7 or 8 invited contractors, and I think 17 in total were interested. of those 17 that were interested, we had about 8 contractors come back with pricing against the schedule. We reviewed the pricing that had come in along with the contractor's work history, knowledge of the network, and we decided that it was probably in the best interest of the program to split the work and have a north and a south operator. So initially it was awarded to Billy Lott and JR Civil. Billy Lott was unable to meet his TM requirements, and JR Civil offered to pick up the slack essentially. So they put a second wheelie digger on the network, which is the one that's currently on Kawara Road. So
Charlie, is that permanent or temporary? Is JR going to do the lot from here on, or is this?
So they will do the lot from here on in.
Okay, thank you.
So we gave them their work packages. They initially, JR Civil started at the beginning of April, at the beginning of May on the southern area. And they were getting through quite a lot of their roads. Their day rate from the start was probably about 15 kilometres a day. So we went and had a chat with them and recalibrated what they were doing to make sure that they were being as thorough as possible, making sure that they were capturing any data that needed to be captured around culverts, which brought their daily rate back down. So at the moment, we're averaging about 6.5 kilometres a day, based on the full month of May. So they started off quite fast and then slowly tapered off towards the end. So I've got a progress report listed in Appendix 1 for the month of May, which shows to date we've done 246 linear kilometres. So you run down a road, 1 kilometre either side is 2 kilometres. So we've done 246 kilometres of linear kilometres, and per day they are saving about $3,500 per day by capturing other work as part of their normal routine or whatever is included in their scope of works. So you see some values there around the completed work program of what's been saved to date, and then we forecast that out to give you some cost savings as featured in the ops report. They found that they are losing material quite well. So all of the material that they are either rearranging from the roadsides, they're able to lose on the roadside, still relatively tidy. So there's some photos of Rampaddock Road where the swale clearing has been, they've cleared the swale and pushed the material up on a natural hill anyway. And most of the network that they've performed that sort of activity on has looked very similar. A lot of the culvert ends now free flow, and there's been very little in terms of damage to assets as part of this work. So I mean, all the ends seem to be fine. There's a few that obviously need to be replaced, and there's quite a few instances of cockies having irrigation or stop-all lines through culverts, which obviously provides some challenges for us, for the contractor and for the cocky, because if we go through it, we don't know it's there, and it shouldn't be there in the first place. So there's a few interesting conversations being had with some farm owners, especially around Harden at the moment, Harden Waikerie at the moment, where there's gonna need to be some changes to how that's done in the future. But I mean, some of the culverts that they're utilising are blocked, so I mean, while we replace it, we might be talking to them around running their stop lines next to it or something similar with the appropriate loss and stop, so that we know they're there in the future.
Are we striking, I can see clearing out an exposed swale by the side of the road, that's all great. Culverts and things like that, are we striking where the silt or the fill of the culverts basically come from over the fence? Are we able to put it back over the fence, or are we going to, I'm sort of thinking, are we going to be able to get depots or whatever where we can dump it if we have to, or is it going to be a problem for us?
So we have provision to take material away. There is provision within the spec that they're operating under to cart. We haven't really needed to yet. And part of their scope is to fence to fence. So they'll clear right way up to a fence, and then where that section of road, that section of drain needs to be opened, they'll flick us a text and get in touch with the landowner, see if the landowner wants us to come in and clear theirs while they're there, and the contractor can manage that themselves. So for the most part, we've been all right. I think there's a couple of areas in Waikari that we're probably going to need to cut some material out of, and that's on the contractor to find a home for. So at the moment, if we have a look at appendix number 2, the list of roads. So the list of roads completed have had their light touch, which was the intention of this program. Is the culvert ends. This isn't reshaping and reforming every single swale. This is making sure culvert ends are open and getting water away from the road as quickly as possible.
Sorry, carry on, just when you pause.
No, it's too late now, you have to speak now.
Yeah, just regarding the plastic, culverts that we've been putting in. And, the mechanical clearing of the ends of those, and being aware that they are quite a delicate product. Are we finding that we're getting into issues where, it's being cleared with a digger, hence causing a bit of damage, or does he hop out of his digger with a shovel and do the last little bit around it? Because I know from experience that a 20-ton digger, just a light touch on a plastic culvert can actually damage it. Whereas a concrete one, you can sort of feel as a digger operator that you're touching it. No, well, I'm just saying, are we able to manage the ends of our culverts with the operators? Because that is a concern, that you damage the end, you bend it in, and it's
through the chair. So the team that are working in their work packages, they consist of one labourer with a shovel,
okay,
who's also the STMS.
Mr. Chair, it's worth pointing out that that's the benefit of the trial, because when we undertook the original trial, it was just one operator in one digger and they were going along, but quite rapidly they got to the point where exactly that they needed that. Not only did they need a spotter, but actually having someone with a shovel around the culvert ends to protect them. So, and that's the program that Charlie struck up. So
great, thank you.
So, like I said, the list of roads that have been completed, they've had their light touch. There is a couple of roads now that need probably a little bit more than a light touch, but we're going through and finishing off the immediate requirement to do something. So where there is roads that have had flooding issues, or there's culverts blocked causing issues, so they're still peaking on the priority list. Once we've gone through and identified the rest of the roads that need something, and then we'll basically restart and make sure that we're on the right track for maybe doing a little bit more. So Christians Road and Harden, that's one that needs a little bit more. Clarence Valley needs a little bit more. So it's about managing the extent of the workload for each road, I guess.
I see Phoebe Road there. That's a bit of a tricky one because it's such a long road, and even doing a side channel, it actually needs field drains really out off the road, get the water off the road, because all you're going to do is form a Grand Canyon down each side of the road by the time you get to because it'll be it'll be a mile and a half, wouldn't it? Easily that straight. So you imagine it gets fed all that water, and it's a roaring torrent by the time it gets down towards Spotswood. And it's that, I think it originally did have field drains out by the railway line and over by the other boundary, but it's trying to reform them. There was a reason they were there, to keep the water off the road. So I don't know if the answer will be just, you might even just have to even use a grader there and do a channel, and then put offcuts into it.
Mary, and then did I see a bit over here as well, Mary?
So Christians Road, is that going to pick up the email, I think, that I received the other day, that will pick up that word as well? So we're doing that?
They're there today.
Well done.
It's great to see the work you're doing.
Yeah, fantastic.
I think, Mr. Chair, that one of the key benefits, and the point that you make, Vince, is that at the moment, sometimes we have heavy rain and we just sort of look around and we know that it probably needs field drains and it needs all these other things, but we don't know if that's the full extent of the work that's needed. So at the very least, we get the road itself in ship-shape condition, and then we know the extent of the flow-on effect. So then that could become a later work package. But at the moment, we've just got even just those the side channels, the water tables, are just not tidy enough for us to make those decent calls and get the money right. So this is a really worthwhile program, no doubt.
Jerry, the photos here, which road am I looking at here? Is that Kaiwara?
Right, so the top left on page 88, that's Rampaddock. So that's the swale that was being tidied up, just before you go up the hill. Then on the top right is Kaiwara. So that was after they had finished tidying up one isolated corner, and then bottom left is before. So it's just a couple of side-by-side comparisons there. So they've done quite a lot of work up Kaiwara. They've done a really good job with what we have. We probably need to put about 5,000 cubic metres of material on it to retain it, but for what was there, the historic scouring, I know some of you would have gone over Kaiwara Road and it was in a bit of a state. It is unbelievable. You can go through it and you can see exactly where they've stopped. You know exactly where they've stopped work. The difference between where they started and finished was, you can't compare them at all.
Shelley, this Rural Excavator program, it's been quite cool following that through. Because it was a number of years ago, the biggest thing we were getting complaints around was the drainage and things on the roads and the deterioration, and that was potholes. That was really the big feedback, and there was quite a discussion around it, working around. Then we've done a trial. To me, we've done a good piece of work the right way, and we end up where we are now. If it was up to me, I'd be expecting to see another trophy on the table next year for the cost savings and how it's improved our whole system. So I think it's really commended. I think it's very good.
Should have an award for it.
This is a trial, as you said. So did we put money in the annual plan LTP to ensure that the project?
So through the chair, so there was funding available for this current year.
Yeah.
There is funding available for this for the next 2 years with the additional funding that I got from NZTA.
Yeah.
So this is as it stands at the moment, with the amount of dollars spent on this program, we probably will be able to see the 2 excavators on the network for the whole next financial year, and then we'll probably go back down to 1 in year 3 of this current LTP.
It'll be interesting to see, as part of this is similar to the grade is around the traffic management, everything else same as there, and I think there's still possibilities in there of whether that might be eased up or not with the regulation minister and everything else. But it'll just be interesting to see over, say, the next year how it all pans out, because I think that's a very valuable bit of work.
And a testament to that, I think, is that all of the hotspots that were hotspots once upon a time aren't necessarily hotspots anymore. I mean, for those of you that know Harden, the preschool on Nelson Street used to be horrendous for flooding, and now it's not. So there used to be some really big areas that people were concerned about that aren't big issues anymore. And so we're seeing the frequency of issues become smaller and the scale become smaller. And I think this will just help us, I guess, really target those problem areas and then decide whether we need to do something different in the future.
So will our investment for next year be another 80 grand, or will it be?
Through the chair, so there's 200,000 allocated each year.
Yeah.
So for each year there's 200, and this is just current spend to date. So we expect to spend all of that 200 by the time this year's out. Then we've got 200 that's part of the LTP, and then we will have another 200 that's been part of the extra funding. So there's essentially 600,000 left for this work. Across the whole 3 years.
And these guys will continue to be our preferred contractor
at this stage.
Yeah.
Very good.
I'd like you to pass on to the grader driver what a great job he's doing. I'm getting good vibes from people saying he seems to know what he's about and is doing a great job. And pass that on to him, will you?
I will, thank you.
And a local thank you is, you know, the job down Golf Links Road. I think there are a lot of happy people for the weekend too, so, yeah, it was well done as well.
I think you might see another report about that one, and then obviously just in future.
Probably. But I thought, you know, as it's looking now, it looks like State Highway 1, it's good for now.
That was another area where we had to do something different. So I went down with the contractor and we decided on what we were gonna do that was different, and it seems to have held up okay for now. Time will tell, but we have a meeting with ECAN down there, because I'm trying to get them to pay for some of it.
Yeah, no, very good.
And have you had any, how did you get on with feedback after the rally? Because the old road I've driven on, and they've been graded and they're really great. Did you get any feedback from people at all?
Through Mr. Chair, not positive feedback. I didn't, we had the graders there on the day. We were following pretty much as close as we could to grade those roads. And no, I didn't get any positive feedback around the state of them after the rally.
I received some positive feedback from one of the drivers in the rally. Yeah. He said they were great roads, and it was great to be able to drive on them, and I really appreciate the work the council did to make those roads available. So,
Couple of them bend ups, but I think a couple I saw on transporters get carted away.
Very good. Okay, look, keeping one eye on the time because we've got a workshop this afternoon. Any further questions for Joe? Otherwise, I think we'll move that the information be received. We'll have a mover. Ari, Ross. All right. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
That leaves us. Last job to do is our action sheet. Not much action on. Help us with that one?
I was going to ask Alex, but he's had to go off and he's unavailable, so.
So that'll come back to us. We're all happy with that. Okay, so nothing further. I think quite happy to declare the meeting closed at 12:51.